Forum is starting a residential program and specifically designed for those students who didn't clear prelims earlier. At that moment, I felt that this program is tailor-made for you because what you described in that email, it felt like somebody was describing me. Fortunately, sir, I cleared prelims. And then, sir, the same schedule for mains, FRC4 started at the same place. And again, I made the same promise. चाहे वो AWFG का टेस्ट हो या SFG का हो या करंट अफेयर्स की क्लास हो, I'll do it. सब कुछ करूँगा जैसा जैसा मुझे बताया जा रहा है. And fortunately, it worked again. Then I stayed there for interview also. And fortunately, I got the rank.
तो फोरम तो एट लेटर स्टेज आया, बट आई बिलीव अगर मेरे पास फोरम की गाइडेंस अगर पहले होती और FRC की गाइडेंस पहले होती तो शायद इतना लंबा टाइम मुझे वेट नहीं करना पड़ता.
मेल आया था FRC का, तो मेरे को अच्छा लगा कि जो सेटअप था वो अच्छा था कि जिससे 11th-12th में पढ़ते थे ना कि जबरदस्ती पढ़ाया जाएगा, वो था. तो मैंने कहा ये तो बेस्ट है. अगर ये पहले होता तो काफी अच्छा हो जाता, तो मतलब इतना टाइम नहीं लगता.
And before coming to FRC, literally there was a lot of broken confidence and I thought I would never be able to clear pre. This is the biggest hurdle of my life. But then ever since December things changed and I just followed the plan to the hilt. Gave every test, even the open test, all the simulators, the CSAT simulators also. It was for the first time that I cleared the prelims, I cleared the mains, and then I cleared the interview and finally got a job under Government of India. I was a part of FRC 1 and FRC 4. So I think FRC played an instrumental role in making me what I am today.
So first, many congratulations to all of you who have cleared the prelims. Let us give them a big hand.
I subscribed to the second level of SFG. I think I told you, sir. I had gotten to know about sir from a very close friend, which was honestly like my paradigmatic change, if you will call it, towards prelims preparation came when I heard sir speak on prelims.
मेरा नाम डॉक्टर आकांक्षा सिंह है. मैं गाज़ीपुर ज़िले से रहने वाली हूँ. मैं ऐसे पेशे से डॉक्टर हूँ. मैंने MBBS और मास्टर्स कर रखी है. मैं गायनोकोलॉजिस्ट हूँ. ये मेरा सेकंड अटैम्प्ट था जिसमें मेरी 301 रैंक आई है UPSC CSE 2025 में.
%65% of IS toppers under rank 10 and 20 in CSE 2025 final list have been students of Mains Guidance Program MGP by ForumIAS Academy, including rank 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19. Mains Guidance Program MGP 2026-27. Join Mains Guidance Program, India's most trusted program for mains preparation. To know more about MGP, speak to an IS topper near you or email us at contact@forumias.com.
Okay, this is a topic that we are going to cover, consumption-led economy. Let's first discuss why we are covering this particular topic. In last class, we covered how GDP is being measured, right, by expenditure method. And we covered that the first component of GDP is private final consumption expenditure. And there is another component called as the government final consumption expenditure. This is private final consumption expenditure and this is government. These two together, we call it as the consumption part of the economy. And then we have a third component which is GCF, gross capital formation. This refers to the investment part of the economy. And then we have the fourth component which is the component of your net exports, which covers the external sector. So in the last class, we covered about the savings rate and the recent development in savings. Like we covered about the decline in the net financial savings of the household. And we also covered about financialization of economy. So we are done with the savings part. Now in today's class, we'll cover the consumption part. After that, we'll cover the investment and then the net exports. These are what the topics we are going to cover. And after that, we'll also be covering other topics like entrepreneurship, which is about the startups. Then innovation, which is about research and development. So these are some of the topics that we are going to plan in today's class. So the first topic is consumption. So this is why this topic becomes important from your static part, right? As far as current affairs is concerned, this topic is also important because of two reasons. As you can see, just 3 days back, I came across this article in Financial Express. This article basically stated that presently, if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 components, out of these 4 components, you must be knowing that the major driver of Indian economy is consumption, which accounts for almost around 61% of the GDP. And if you add government ka, it is somewhere around 10%. So totally it accounts around 70%. So the article here basically says that if India has to become Viksit Bharat, we should no longer focus on the consumption. From consumption, we should focus more upon the capability. And when I say capability, it is more about increasing the investment. This is not something which is very new. It is an ongoing thing right from 2016-17. For the first time ever, somewhere in 2017-18, the Economic Survey had proposed that India must shift gears from consumption-led economy to investment-led economy, right? So that is part of your current affairs. That is reason number 1. Reason number 2, you must be knowing that the National Statistical Office, it has started publishing the MPC, monthly per capita consumption expenditure. Earlier, this MPC survey was carried out every 5 years. But now MPC survey is being carried out every year on an annual basis. The MPC survey has highlighted as to how the consumption pattern in India is evolving. So in the mains, you may get a question about what are the results of this MPC survey, and based upon the results of MPC survey, what future lessons we should learn. That is the kind of question that you can get. So these are your 2 practice questions that we are going to cover. I hope it is clear. Okay? So let's start with the basics. That is the static part. Once we cover the static part, then we'll integrate the current affairs into our discussion. So सबसे पहले with respect to PFC, private final consumption expenditure, what we will do is, all of you must have studied the basics about PFC, basics things. We are going to recap, revise those basic things about what exactly is private final consumption expenditure, basic thing. When we say PFC, you can concentrate on the first word. What is it? Private. So it is basically the expenditure incurred by households, not just households, it also includes expenditure by NGOs, non-governmental organizations. It does not include expenditure by companies or, for that matter, government. And here, what is included in PFC? That is important, because if you know what is included and what is excluded in PFC, you can easily write answers with respect to what are the challenges with consumption-led model. Here, when I say what is included, you know, in the prelims module, you have studied about different types of goods which are produced, right? One type of goods, you know, they are called as what? Capital goods. Capital goods are basically the goods that are used to manufacture other goods. And you must be knowing that the capital goods are never included in consumption expenditure. The capital goods are included where? कहाँ पे include होता है? it is always included as a investment expenditure. If you purchase consumer goods, it is part of private final consumption expenditure. If you purchase a capital good, it is a part of investment expenditure. Let me just give you an example to make it more clear. Let's talk about something like sieving machine. If I, as a household, if I purchase a sieving machine, for me, sieving machine will be what? Consumer goods. But if a enterprise purchases a sieving machine, that sieving machine is going to use for manufacturing of other clothes. So the sieving machine for that enterprise will become what? Capital goods. I hope you understood this, right? What you should also know, goods which are produced for self-consumption, they are also included in the consumption expenditure. When you say services, services for which you pay money, it is always included. But services for which you do not pay money, that is never included in the consumption expenditure. Best example of a service which is unpaid is something like household work that we do. That is never included in the consumption expenditure. Then, if you talk about land and buildings, if you invest money on land and buildings, if you purchase that money, understand it is never included as consumption expenditure. It is always included as what? It is included as investment. It is considered as an investment by a particular household. Same way, if a tenant is paying the rent for a particular building, can I say the tenant paying a rent for the building is like what kind of service? Paid service. It will be included. Apart from that, what is interesting is imputed rent of owner occupied buildings. There is a owner of a building. This owner is occupying the building for himself and he has not rented out the building. So what we will assume here is, what if the owner had rented out the building? In case he had rented out the building, what is the possible rent he would have earned? That imputed rent is always included in the consumption expenditure. क्या logic बनता है? Why is it included? Anyone? No, it's not C. Building is a kind of investment, and can I say it's almost like saying that the economy is providing services to a particular owner. When economy is providing services to a owner, even though the owner is not paying money from his own pocket, he is availing a service, and ultimately कौन service provide कर रहा है? Economy is providing a service. That is why it is always included. That is one way of knowing it. Second, I hope you know the concept of opportunity cost. If I, as an owner, if I'm occupying a particular building, there's some opportunity cost. What is the cost? I'm losing out on the rent. So opportunity cost is a cost of the rent which I'm losing out. So even that should also get included in the PFC. Further, know that when you invest your money in either shares or bonds, this money invested in shares and bonds is either not part of PFC, and what is interesting is it is not even part of your GCF. Any idea why? Why it is not part of GCF? क्या रीजन हो सकता है? I think it's a good point what he's trying to say. See, when you purchase share, what is actually happening is the ownership of the share is getting changed. Are you actually making any kind of investment? Or for that matter, are you actually producing goods and services? For example, I have purchased share of 15 rupees from you. And after I purchase a share of 15 rupees from you, I sell the share at rupees 20. It is wrong to include 15 plus 20 as a part of economy. Number one, it leads to double counting. And second, there is no actual production of goods and service. There is actually only a flow of money between the two parties. So it is wrong to include investment in shares and bonds as part of your gross capital formation. I hope you understood this point. Now, some people may have this doubt. What about the money that you invest in IPO? If you invest in IPO, will that be part of your GCF? Even then, it will not be part of GCF. The reason is very simple. Think of it this example, everyone. There is a particular company. This company has issued share to me at, let's say, rupees 10. Later, I sell this share at rupees 15 to a particular investor X. If you look at this transaction, in this transaction, there is no actual production of goods and services. What is GDP, by the way? GDP is where production actually takes place. So obviously, this will never get included. But if I purchase share from a particular company, what I am doing is I am providing for what? Capital to the company. And this capital, the company may actually make investment. Getting this point? But even this will not get included in the gross capital formation. The reason here is, when a company is making investment of, let's say, rupees 10 in the economy, by default, it is already included in the economy as what? Gross capital formation. If I include even this as gross capital formation, you know what will happen in that particular case? Very good. It will lead to the problem of double counting. That's the reason. Whether you purchase share in a primary market or you purchase share in the secondary market, that is never ever included in the GDP calculation. I hope it's clear to everyone now. Okay. See, when you're writing an answer about consumption, investment-led economy, these are the basic things you must write. Suppose, say, if you're writing about why do we need investment-led economy, and if you suddenly write about the IPO market and all those things, there will be a lack of coherence. Examiner will understand that you don't know the basics itself. That's why these things are quite important. Shares and bonds are never included, either in consumption or investment. And same way, gold is not included in consumption, but gold is included where? Investment. Gold is considered as an investment. All of you check your handout. I think the first part of the handout is the basics about PFC. The first part. Can you see that part? Just read through that particular part, everyone. Whatever I've written, the same thing is there. Just you can add to that notes that capital goods are not included. Capital goods are not included. Fine. Okay. So we have covered what is the meaning of private final consumption expenditure. Next, let's see the trends in private final consumption expenditure. For that, are you able to recall the trends in the savings rate that we covered in last class? It has declined from 34% to 30% of the GDP. Savings is a flow concept or a stock concept? It's a stock concept. That's what we have covered. Private final consumption expenditure. Now tell me what concept it is. It's a flow or a stock? Take your time. Is it a flow or a stock? What is GDP, by the way? GDP is a flow or stock? Please don't tell me stock. What is GDP? GDP is production of goods and services in 1 year. GDP is equal to PFC. तो PFC क्या होना चाहिए? Flow or stock? It has to be a flow concept. So when we say PFC, it tells us how much money are the households and the non-profit institutions are spending in 1 year. एक साल में कितना पैसा खर्च कर रहे हैं? किस पे खर्च कर रहे हैं? These are the things. Now, I told you that PFC in India is around 61% of GDP. And if you could see the handout, it says that the PFC has risen to an all-time high since the year 2011-12. Let's put it in terms of absolute value, by the way. Approximately. Nominal GDP of India is somewhere around 300 lakh crores. 60% of 300 lakh crores. How much will that be? 180 lakh crores is what the households and NGOs spend on these things in 1 single year. I hope now you are able to relate to it. Savings rate जो है, how much it is? 30%. 30% of 300 lakh crore. How much does it come out to? And what is that? Flow or stock? Stock. This is money that we have invested. They are two different things. I hope now you got the clarity now. Okay? So this is risen to its highest level since 2011-12. Now let's try to establish relationship between consumption, savings, as well as investment. These are the 3 macroeconomic variables, and we'll establish a relationship between the 3. To a large extent, we have already seen the relationship in the last class when we covered the topic of savings. Now we are going to put everything in one particular place. But in the last class, our focus was on savings. Our focus is now shifting to consumption. Okay? So now, if you see, if consumption expenditure is very high, what will happen is there will be higher demand for goods and services. But the problem here is, even though the demand for goods and services is very high, because people are spending more amount of money, what will happen to savings in the Indian economy? Savings will be less. If savings are less, can we say that the cost of capital will obviously increase? It's like saying that banks will have less money to give out loans. As the cost of capital increases, can we say that this can discourage investment, and because of which it can hurt our GDP growth? So high consumption expenditure is actually bad for any economy. Same way, if you say the consumption expenditure is low, people are actually spending less. If there is lower demand for goods and services, can we say that the savings will actually increase. यहां पे क्या होगा? The cost of capital in the economy will reduce. But you know what's the problem here? यहां पे प्रॉब्लम कहां पे शिफ्ट हो रहा है? Yes, even though the cost of capital has got reduced, this will still discourage investment. Why people or companies will not make investment? Due to lack of demand. All of you know that we have introduced GST reforms 2.2 or income tax reforms. What is the main reason for introducing GST reforms 2.2? Because we wanted to give a fillip to the consumption, which was actually reducing. So we thought that if you bring about GST reforms 2.2, the prices of goods and services will reduce, which will in turn spur the demand in the economy. So even the low consumption expenditure is actually bad. Which is same as, remember in the last class, both lower savings and higher savings are equally bad. What we need is a moderate amount of savings. So by that logic, our consumption expenditure क्या होना चाहिए? Our consumption expenditure should be moderate. Moderate consumption expenditure means there is adequate demand and there is adequate savings. There's a balance between the two. Because of this particular fine balance, it will encourage investment by the companies. And as the investment increases, GDP growth will also increases. I think there's a space where I have left this. So I think the space is adequate enough for incorporating these flowcharts. Okay. Are we clear until now? Okay. Let's move to the next part. The next part is where we will see what are the challenges with consumption-led model. What are the challenges? Okay. Please pay attention. Do not see the handout. Just close the handout. Can you generate some points with respect to what do you think are the challenges with consumption-led model of the Indian economy? Take your time. 1 minute. And if you have at least 4 to 5 points, you can raise your hands. And I hope you're not seeing the handout. Think. Try to generate points. See, the points that I'm going to say, they're not going to be anything extraordinary. These are the points that you already know. These are the points which you already have in your head. You just have to get them out on a paper. So think, what do you think are the challenges? If you consume more, उससे problem क्या हो सकता है? At least 4 to 5. Huh. Okay, one point I'll take. He says ki if there is a consumption-led model, what will happen to savings rate in the Indian economy? Savings rate will reduce. Good. Then higher borrowings because of the consumption, people will borrow more, and if they borrow more, what will happen to household debt? Household debt will increase. And remember in the last class we covered what has happened to household debt in India. It has increased to an all-time high of 40%. Anything else? Huh? It may lead to inflation as well because of the consumption. Agar demand increases, obviously it will lead to inflation. And inflation means there will be more of macroeconomic instability. Good. Cost of capital might increase then. Good, good. Then rupee value will? Yes. Then I think that's a very good point what it's trying to say. Good. Okay. See, some people are still going blank. If I'm asking you to generate points with respect to consumption-led model, the framework should remain same as what we covered in yesterday's class. The framework is pretty simple. How do you measure GDP? Private final consumption expenditure plus gross capital formation, government final consumption expenditure, then net exports. This is how we directly measure GDP. But apart from this, if you want to increase the GDP size, what else is also equally important is we need more of what? Savings. We need more savings, right? Apart from savings, can I also say that we need a macroeconomic stability? Remember the last class also we covered the same thing, ki reduce risk and the stability, the economy should be more stable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 points ready just by looking at this framework. For example, because we're talking about problems with challenge, the consumption led, let's focus on this PFC, the first point. Why is India growing right now? India is growing right now because people are purchasing more goods and services. But the question is, who are these people who are purchasing goods and services? Essentially, can I say it is a younger working age population? Because India is facing demographic dividend. More than 55% of India's population is in the working age group. And these people have a higher propensity to consume. Because they're consuming more, the consumption expenditure is increasing. But you know that India is not going to remain young forever. The demographic dividend might start waning from 2030s also. So as the demographic dividend starts to reduce, what will happen to PFC? PFC will reduce. That is why we say that relying on consumption-led model is what? Unsustainable. I'll dictate each of these points, just pay attention. Then, if we focus more on consumption, what will happen to savings rate in India? Reduces. But if you just write savings rate has got reduced, everyone is writing the same point, how will you distinguish your answer from rest of the people? By quoting data. You know the data, you know the trend. So what is the trend? Decline in savings rate from 34% to 30% in the last decade. And can you see, ये कब से बढ़ना start हो गया? Consumption expenditure. You can see the handout. You can see the handout. Present status में देखना वहाँ पे. Yes. And savings rate कब से कम होने लग गया? 11, 12. Can you see both are coinciding? The time when the savings rate got reducing, at the same time the consumption expenditure has started to increase. You need to correlate the two important trends. You know, that is how we connect one fact with another fact. Okay. Now savings rate has got reduced. What will happen to GCF, gross capital formation? Investment rate. Investment rate will also reduce. But once again, you need to quote a data here to highlight it. And the data here is, I told you, if you remember the trend for savings rate, the trend remains same for even investment. So just like how savings rate has got reduced from 34 to 30, investment rate has also got reduced from 34 to 30 because of more consumption. Then anyone can link this thing. Ultimately, we are not just talking about private final consumption expenditure. We are talking about what model? Consumption-led model. Can you relate it to government expenditure and say that this is a problem with the government expenditure with respect to consumption? Anyone? Good, good, good. Take it forward. Good. Good. Okay, he is trying to relate it. Good. But not completely though. See, we actually borrow money. And we discuss the money that we borrow in 1 year. उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? Fiscal deficit. After we borrow the money, we can spend that borrowed money either for revenue expenditure or for capital expenditure. If the government is spending money for capital expenditure, can I say that it is essentially what? Gross capital formation. If the government is spending money for revenue expenditure में क्या आता है आपका? Salaries, pensions, subsidies. Tell me, is it GCF or kind of an consumption? It is consumption. Now think, if government is borrowing money and if more borrowings is government is spending on revenue expenditure, and if the government is spending less money on capital expenditure, we call this phenomena as poor quality of fiscal deficit. You know, there is a rule. Yes, good. There's a rule called as golden fiscal rule. The golden fiscal rule says whatever money which the government borrows, that borrowed money should be used for capital expenditure and not for revenue expenditure. So can I say, if we are focusing more on consumption, it will violate our golden fiscal rule and it will make our quality of fiscal deficit quite poor. समझ में आया? From where I am generating points? The points I'm generating from the framework. If you have the framework ready and if you know economy as a subject, you can easily generate points. It is nothing exceptional, by the way. Getting this point? ये देखो, net exports. How can you relate to net exports, by the way? How do you calculate net exports? Exports minus imports. If we are focusing more on consumption, क्या होगा फिर? If we are consuming more goods, automatically we are consuming more goods means the exports will reduce and imports will increase, which means our net exports, which is negative, will become more negative. Our exports will reduce and imports will increase, which might lead to increase in the current account deficit. Clear? With respect to macroeconomic stability, here you can generate 2 points. That what will happen to our household debt? Household debt will increase because of this. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if people are consuming more goods and services, then sudden increase in demand might lead to increase in inflation. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 to 8 points are ready directly from this framework. Is it clear? And I told you that you can keep the same framework for the savings also. In fact, the next topic that I'm going to cover, investment. In investment also, I'm going to cover the same framework. The only thing is, there the focus will shift to what? Investment. But the framework will remain same. So having this kind of framework for every topic is quite important. Like for growth, this is a framework. When I'll discuss inclusive growth, I'll tell you another framework. That framework you can keep in mind. While discussing budgeting, there's another framework. For agriculture, there's another framework. For every theme and topic, if you have a frame, from that framework, you generate points. And what is mains, by the way? Mains is all about generating points, which are more logical. Clear? Can you start writing? So you can see the problems with consumption-led economy. First point, unsustainable in the long run. Put a hyphen and write. Increase in consumption. Increase in consumption is due to demographic dividend. Increase in consumption is due to demographic dividend, which may reduce after 2030s. Which may reduce after 2030s. Decline in savings rate, you know the trend from 34% to 30%. Decline in investment rate, you know the trend, same 34% to 30%. 34% in the year 2011-12 to 30% in 23-24. Poor quality of fiscal deficit, you can put a hyphen and write. Higher expenditure of the government on consumption. Higher government expenditure on consumption. In the bracket, revenue expenditure. In the bracket, revenue expenditure, bracket close, as opposed to capital expenditure. In the bracket, GCF, gross capital formation. Violates golden fiscal rule. Violates golden fiscal rule. Huh? Gross capital formation. You can write in short as GCF. Next, increase in trade deficit due to increase in imports and decrease in exports. Due to increase in imports and decrease in exports. Next, increase in household debt. You know the data. What's the household debt? 40% of the GDP. 40% of the GDP. Next, leads to macroeconomic instability. Put a hyphen and write. Higher inflation. Now, these are the pointers. In the mains examination, you should be able to elaborate on these points. Does not address structural problems. Put a hyphen and write. Indian economy needs more investment in agriculture, investment, infrastructure, etc. as compared to consumption. As compared to consumption to become Viksit Bharat. To become Viksit Bharat. Now tell me, in case of agriculture, what is the biggest structural problem? Okay, apart from that, even now? Huh? Okay, think of it. Let's talk about marketing. If I am the government, one way for me to help the farmers is to provide them legal backing in the form of MSP. Another way for me to help the farmers is to construct more godowns, cold chain facilities, more APMCs. Between these two, which is more long-term and sustainable? construction of godowns, construction of more APMCs. If you give MSP, it might help them only in the short run, and it is not going to be sustainable in the long run because we have to keep giving them MSP forever. MSP is more of consumption, but this is more of investment. So what India needs now is not consumption. What India needs is more of investment. Same way, if you talk about infrastructure, it says that India has to spend almost 143 lakh crores by 2030 on infrastructure. We'll discuss that in the theme of infrastructure. So look at our infrastructure needs, 130 lakh crores by 2030. It's quite humongous. It's quite a huge amount. We cannot afford to spend that particular money on the purpose, on the consumption part, like freebies. So that is why we say that India must shift from consumption-led model to investment-led model. I hope it's clear, everyone. Okay. So ultimately, what's the way forward? Way forward is that if you see presently, India में क्या हो रहा है? We have a high consumption expenditure. High consumption expenditure is leading to higher demand. Because of this higher demand, the companies are encouraged to make a more amount of investment. As companies are making more investment, what is happening to our GDP growth? Increases. As a GDP growth increases, what is happening to the income of the people? Increases. As the income of the people increases, फिर से क्या हो रहा है? Consumption expenditure बढ़ रहा है. It means if I consider economy as a bus, the consumption expenditure is actually in what? Driver's seat. It is like saying consumption expenditure is determining the future growth prospects of the Indian economy. So far we are not really worried about it because ये सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा है. But ठीक कब तक चलेगा? जब तक ये consumption expenditure keeps on increasing. I told you now it is increasing because a major chunk of India's population is in the working age group. But as people turn old, as people become more senior citizens, what will happen is automatically people will start to save more money and they will demand for less goods and services. Ultimately, as the demand reduces, investment will also start to reduce and our GDP growth rate will fall. So what is a key to have future growth prospects of the economy is rather than putting consumption expenditure in the driver's seat, what should be in the driver's seat is what? Investment is the driver's seat. ये कैसे होना चाहिए? That is, we'll be linking it to the next topic. But just to give you a basic overview of how to put investment in the driver's seat, you focus on increasing investment. Here we are focusing on what? Increasing the consumption, but you first focus on increasing investment. If you increase investment, automatically what will happen to GDP? GDP will increase. As a GDP increases, income of the people will also increase. But here, remember in the last class I told you that if income of the people increases by 10%, consumption expenditure will not increase by 10%. Consumption expenditure will increase by probably less than 10%. So, increase in income, which is 10%, might be higher than increase in the consumption expenditure which could be like 6%. इससे क्या होगा? What will happen to our savings rate? Savings in the economy will increase, and अगर savings बढ़ गया तो ultimately क्या होगा? Investment बढ़ेगा. Can you see this cycle? This cycle is almost same, but the only difference is what is in the driver's seat. यहाँ पे consumption expenditure is the main lead. Here it is a investment which is propelling the economy. If you focus on promoting investment, you're taking care of investment, you're taking care of GDP, you're taking care of what? Consumption also. And not just that, आप क्या कर रहे हो? इसके साथ साथ you're also increasing the savings. Which country has followed this model? It is basically a model which has been followed by countries such as China, as well as East Asian economies. So you can just see the way forward, which I have incorporated in the handout. हाँ, कहाँ पे? Second model में we are increasing the demand because consumption is high. ठीक है? यहाँ पे investment बढ़ने से automatically we are expecting that the demand will increase. Example of which is, think if you are making more investment on construction of roads, railways, ports, airports, etc. क्या होगा demand economy में? बढ़ेगा, because we need more raw materials like iron, steel, cement, electricity. If you make more investment, what will happen to job creation in India? Increases. If people are finding jobs on a regular basis, their wages they're getting on a regular basis, जिससे क्या हो सकता है? Demand बढ़ सकता है. You know crowding in effect, right? वहाँ पे government will spend money. Even the private sector also spends money. It can increase the demand for goods and services. Ultimately, we have to increase the demand. Demand can increase either by consumption or by investment. Obviously, I was coming to that only, like China. So the problem is investment model is good, but the problem is if you do too much of investment also. If you make too much of investment, what will happen is it will lead to a problem which we call it as what? Over capacity. You end up creating excessive supply of goods and services. And if you create excessive supply of goods and services, it will not turn into inflation. It will turn into what? Deflation. And that is what is the problem with China. So in China, if you know what is happening in China, China is facing a crisis in the real estate where there is oversupply of housing and commercial projects. Because of oversupply of housing and commercial projects, the property prices in China have crashed. They have turned into deflation. Is it clear? And something like real estate. Real estate is considered to be one of the core sector of an economy because it has multiplier effects. It has, linkages with the other sectors. If core sector collapses, I mean like real estate sector collapses, it can affect the other sectors also. Like, index of 8 core industries, पढ़ा होगा ना? उसमें से कुछ industries का नाम ले सकते हो आप? कौन कौन से 8 होते हैं? Refinery, coal and fertilizers. जो मैं चाहता हूँ वो नहीं आ रहा है. Yes, cement, then electricity, steel, ये सब क्या है? They are related to which sector? Real estate sector. Is that part clear? Okay. You understood? So yes, investment is good, but at the same time, too much of investment is also equally bad. We have to have a fine balance between investment and consumption. Okay, look at the next page, question for practice. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Please think of structuring the answer in terms of introduction, body, and conclusion. Remember the last class we covered about the 5-step approach, and we discussed that never start with the introduction. The best way to start is with what? Body of the answer. Just start. 2 minutes. The space is sufficient. Yes, 30 seconds more. Done. Okay. How many parts does the question has? So in the body of the answer, okay, only one part. No, there's the first part of the question also, no? So where that should be? Uh-huh. So when you start with the body, what's the first part? No, first part should be this, na? Exactly. You missed out the first part. Why? Not read the question properly? But you do not focus on the first part, na? First part of the question. The question has actually 2 parts. I hope you are able to identify how many parts the question has. 2 parts. First part of the question requires you to establish relationship between consumption, savings, and investment. And second part of the question requires you to write about the challenges with the consumption-led model. For the first part, what you can simply do is whatever flowchart which we prepared, the same flowchart can be put in the body of the answer. For the second part, challenges, you already have around 7 to 8 points. Those challenges you can write. What do you think could be the introduction here? What is the one statement that will write? You can start with the trend. What is the main central theme of the question? Central theme of the question is not savings and investment. Central theme of the question is what? Consumption. Do not miss out on this. Question is never about savings and investment. Question is about consumption. And I told you by default, the best way to start an introduction in economy is you can either start with the meaning or you can start with the present status. It is wrong to start with the meaning here because it looks very schoolboyish. So rather than meaning, you start with the trend. Trend though you know already, right? And in the body of the answer, the last part of the body of the answer is you're writing challenges with the consumption-led model. Logically, conclusion क्या होना चाहिए फिर? The way forward that we discussed, that India must shift gears from consumption-led model to investment-led model. There are the value addition points. Remember, I told you the keyword for it: B, double C, D, E, F. You do not have anything from the budget. Case studies. Do you have any specific case studies? China and East Asian economies. There is no specific committee as such. Do you have any specific diagram? You can have a flowchart which is there in the body of the answer already. Do you have anything from economic survey? The trends from economic survey, in fact, who has said that we need to shift gears from consumption led to investment? It has been given by economic survey. Ye wala can be included in your conclusion itself. And already you have a lot of facts, data. What all facts do you know? Can you recall those facts? You know the facts related to trends in private final consumption expenditure. You know the facts related to trends in savings rate, investment rate, facts related to your household debt. In fact, every bullet point that you are writing, always try to substantiate that bullet point either with a fact or with a specific example. That's very important. You know, there are two ways of doing it. Number one, you can explain the bullet point, or you keep a bullet point very short, but do value addition to the bullet point by giving an example or a data. I would say the second one is much better than writing a elaborate bullet point. You know why people do not complete the paper is because they tend to over-explain the things. Do not over-explain the things. Like, what will you write about challenges with consumption-led model? Decline in savings rate. Don't you think it is self-explanatory always? Why to explain ki increase in consumption expenditure will lead to fall in the savings rate in the economy? It's such a long statement. Just one small statement. Decline in savings rate. Example, 34% to 30% in the last decade. That's more than sufficient. So always remember, whenever you write bullet point, make a conscious attempt. Think yourself, ki how can I add value to this bullet point? Through a data, through an example, through a case study, it could be anything. But value addition is must for a bullet point. I hope it's clear. There might be certain bullet points where, you know, explanation is not needed. No need to over-explain it. For example, if you're writing about challenges of micro irrigation, वहाँ पे you can write the last or second last point, lack of awareness. इसमें क्या ही explain करना है? Did you understand what I'm trying to say? Okay? But वो वाला point आपका first point नहीं होना चाहिए. वो वाला point आपका either last or second last. Lack of awareness should never be your first point. So it should order your points in the order of priority. That's also very important. And look at the way we are preparing notes also. एक बार अपने notes देख लो. What is the first point when we discuss challenges with consumption-led model? We started with the most important point, which is unsustainable in the long run. You cannot directly start with macroeconomic instability here. So that is also very important. And वो वाला point कैसे आता है? Priority wise. By the same framework. Like we covered here, framework. Give me a second. Okay, so when I gave you a framework, you know, what are the first point starting with? PFC. Okay? So I'll just show you the suggested answer structure. This is one of the ways by which you can write the answer structure. I think this is wrongly mentioned. यहाँ पे आपको क्या लिखना चाहिए? आपका trends आना चाहिए. The trend is the private final consumption expenditure account for what percentage of GDP? 61% of GDP. उसके बाद part 1 relationship between savings, consumption and investment. And you can make a passing reference कि especially in last 2 to 3 years there has been fall in consumption. And then what are the problems with consumption? And can you see this is the conclusion? And I told you conclusion, what you should always do is you should not just write strategies. Strategies के साथ क्या लिखना है आपको? Implications. For example, the first statement is the strategies. As evident in growth model of China and East Asian economies, we need to shift from investment to consumption to investment. Second statement is about implication. Such a growth model would promote investment, increase GDP, boost jobs, increase per capita income, and thus sustain this in savings, investment, GDP virtuous cycle. Is that clear? You can simply add it to your notes, the handout, so that you are able to replicate the same quality of answers later. The conclusion part. हाँ 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 जी. Yeah, so when you're writing a flowchart में first word क्या आना चाहिए? Consumption. How consumption determines savings, investment and GDP. हाँ, तो वहाँ पे investment पहला आना चाहिए. How investment will have a link on savings, consumption and GDP. So whatever is central theme, that central theme will become the primary focus of the question. Huh? You can always do that. Huh? You can always do that. Because the first part of the question itself requires you to establish a relationship. And to establish a relationship, you can always make a flowchart. Are we clear with this, everyone? Okay. I'll anyway share the PDF as well, yesterday's and today's. So you can also go to the PDF as well. Let's move to the next topic, which is once again related to consumption. All of you can see here the next topic. It is about MPC survey, monthly per capita consumption expenditure survey. This survey, the latest survey data that we have is from 2024. This is the latest survey. So let's understand the details about this survey, what policy lessons that we learn, and what are the important results of this survey. Okay. You can just pay attention, everything is in the handout. Do not see the handout, just pay attention, everything is in the handout. I'm just writing it to explain it to you. So there is a survey that we carry out called as monthly per capita consumption expenditure survey. This survey is carried out by National Statistical Office. This survey earlier was carried out on a 5-year basis, but now this survey is carried out on a yearly basis. What are we doing in this survey is, number one, we are trying to find out how much money are people spending? Second, where are the people spending that particular money? This is what we are trying to find out. Why is this important? Is because, so when you look at poverty in India, you know, poverty in India is never estimated based upon the income of a person. Poverty in India is always estimated based upon what? Expenditure of a person, where we try to estimate whether people are able to meet their basic needs or not. So based upon MPC, we can estimate what percentage of people are actually poor in India. Same way, when we say inequality, okay, this is very interesting. When we say inequality, the first thing that comes to our mind is in terms of income inequality. But inequality has different dimensions. One dimension of inequality is also in terms of what? Inequality in terms of consumption. And this can also help us to know what is happening to the standard of living of people in India. This is the most important survey which is give us a kinds of bird's eye view about all of these three things in Indian economy. So with respect to this survey, सबसे पहले क्या हुआ है? There is increase in monthly per capita consumption expenditure in both rural areas as well as urban areas. Now see the handout. You can see in the rural areas it has increased to 4122, and in the urban areas it has increased to 6996. It has increased in both rural as well as urban. Now people are spending more money. In terms of sorry, in terms of absolute amount, people are spending more. इससे क्या implications है? Who estimates poverty line in India? Poverty line, who estimates poverty line? This is something which you must have studied in prelims. Which committee's recommendations are being followed now? Suresh Chandlukar committee's recommendations are followed. But who is estimating the poverty line and measuring what percentage of people are poor in India? Earlier, this was done by Planning Commission. Because Planning Commission has been dismantled, now this role is performed by Niti Aayog. But right now, officially, please understand, officially we are not estimating the percentage of BPL population. Last time it was done in the year 2011-12 officially, and in the year 2011-12 we got to know that 22% of people are below poverty line in the year 2011-12, and that time Niti Aayog was not there, by the way. That time who it was? Planning Commission. After that, we estimated poverty once again in the year 2017-18. But somehow the government was not really convinced with the data of 2017-18 when we carried out what? MPC. Because, you know, there were some problems with the way the survey was carried out, and we got to know that in 2017-18, rather than increase in MPC, the MPC in India had actually got reduced. So we decided to scrap that particular report in the year 2017-18. So the only official BPL estimates that we have is from 2011-12. But according to a media statement given by Niti Aayog, no official report, but according to a media statement given by Niti Aayog, it has said for the first time ever, BPL population in India has got reduced to below 5%. Can you see such a drastic fall in the BPL population because our monthly per capita expenditure has increased? Do you understand the results here? इससे क्या lessons है? What lessons should you learn from this? Just look at your handout. In terms of lessons, there's a specific word which I mentioned. What is that particular word? New welfare approach. How many of you know about this new welfare approach of the government? Anyone? Okay. Huh? Come again? Apart from that, what else? Huh? Social infrastructure, then capital expenditure, then okay. Universal basic income. Government is giving universal basic income. Okay. Anyways, we'll cover this concept of new welfare approach in much greater detail under the theme of inclusive growth. But I'll just give a simple idea of what is this new welfare approach. In fact, this was an idea put forward by the economic survey 2 years back. And remember, if you have seen the PYQ, I think it was mains 2024. In mains 2024, there was a question about examining the trends of the government expenditure on social sector, to what extent it has been able to achieve the objective of inclusive growth. First part of the question was trend. Second part of the question is to what extent it has been able to achieve the objective of inclusive growth. To write an answer to second part, you could have taken the help of what? New welfare approach. So what is this new welfare approach? Number one, under this, government is focusing more on social sector. We are spending more money on education, health, skill set, and those things. Second, in social sector, for example, let's say schools, hospitals, etc. Within social sector, we can spend money either on revenue expenditure or we can spend money on capital expenditure, even in social sector. Example of which is, let's talk about education. In the field of education, we can spend money in revenue expenditure. For example, by providing free uniforms, free textbooks to the students. In the field of education, we can spend in the form of capital expenditure for construction of new schools or upgrading the existing facility in schools. Like you must have heard about Atal Tinkering Labs. What government is doing over a period of time, even within the social sector, it is increasing its expenditure on what? Capital expenditure. Don't you think it is good because it is going to help us in the long run? It is more sustainable. It will enhance our capacity to provide for more of social services in future. You provide free medicines for people. What expenditure will it become? Revenue. You construct more primary healthcare centers. You must have heard about Ayushman Arogya Mandirs. Ye kya hai? Capital expenditure. What is better? Ayushman Arogya Mandir, because it is focusing on prevention, but giving medicines is what? Curative. Prevention is always better than cure. So that is what the government is focusing. This is what is new welfare approach. Apart from that, government is also focusing on universalization of basic services. All the basic services that you can think of, we are ensuring that everyone is able to have access to those basic services. A case in point is, we are constructing houses for people under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Once the house is constructed, we are giving them with drinking water under Jal Jeevan Mission. Once the house is constructed, we have provided them with water connection. We are giving them electricity connection under a scheme called as Saubhagya scheme. Then we are providing them with the LPG connection. What is that scheme? Ujjwala scheme. Good. इसके साथ साथ we are ensuring that these people have access to what? bank account, which is under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. You know, MPI, multidimensional poverty. Multidimensional poverty, housing, water, electricity, LPG, ये क्या है? It's part of our endeavor to address the multidimensional aspect of poverty through what? New welfare approach. So what should be our future lesson? Our future lesson is we should continue to focus on new welfare approach. That is how we can go for eradication of poverty. Did you get the point, everyone? I think it is not mentioned, but you can just take this down into your handout about this new welfare approach, everyone. It's a very good concept about new welfare approach. If the question is asked in the mains, good enough. But even if the question is not asked in the mains, create an opportunity to use this concept of new welfare approach, particularly in the topic of inclusive growth or development. Okay, you can see the next thing, next result. If you see the handout, gap between rural MPC and urban MPCE has actually got reduced. Where do people spend more money? Urban areas as compared to rural areas. But if you look at the gap, right, between the people in urban and rural, this gap has got reduced. You can look at the data. It has got reduced from 84% to almost around 70%. Because of this, you know, what is the result is, I don't know how many of you followed this news. Last year, World Bank published a particular report last year. I think it was somewhere just before the mains examination, last year mains. World Bank published a report, and in its report, World Bank highlighted that India is the fourth most equal country in the world. When World Bank published this report, you know, everyone was very surprised, because they were surprised ki how come India is equal. Because all the time the news that we hear about India is what? Rising inequalities. But the media did not portray what equality the World Bank was talking about. World Bank did not speak anything about income equality. World Bank was talking about what equality? Consumption equality. It is never about income. It was about consumption. So can you see here? Rural MPC and urban MPC का जो gap है वो कम हो रहा है, which means what has happened to consumption inequality in India? Consumption inequality in India is reducing. That is what you should know. I hope it's clear, everyone. At the same time, there was another report. I don't know how many of you know about it. A report was called as World Inequality Lab Report. That report published that India is the most unequal country in the world in terms of income distribution. So that report was more about income. World Bank report was more about consumption. So, you know, in mains, it's all about picking and choosing. If you want to highlight good thing about India, which report will highlight? World Bank report. If you want to highlight bad thing about India, what will you highlight? World Inequality Lab report. So here we are talking about good thing about consumption. You can quote about World Bank report. Okay. What's a future lesson that you can learn? You can look at the handout. rural and urban MPC has actually got reduced. But the problem is, even now, there is large scale disparities between the states. Like in developed states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, the MPC is much higher as compared to UP, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, etc. So we need to address those disparities between the states. And because we have largely taken care of consumption equality, now the time is to focus on what equality? Income equality. The last part. I think the most important thing which this survey has pinpointed is there is change in the consumption pattern within economy. Change in the consumption pattern. With respect to change in the consumption pattern, people can spend on food or non-food. Within food, people can spend money on cereal grains, or people can spend money on processed foods or the beverages. What this report has highlighted is, over a period of time, the amount of money spent on food has got reduced and the amount of money spent on non-food has increased. You can see the handout. In the urban areas, it is how much? 60%. In the rural areas, it is 52%. I would say it's a very big paradigm shift, because for the first time ever, the money which is spent on food, ये क्या हो गया है? It has got reduced to less than 50% for the first time ever. This is a very big shift in the consumption pattern of India. And if you see within food, where are people actually spending more money? They are spending less on cereal grains and they are spending more on processed foods and beverages. And within non-food, if you see the different categories like telecommunication, conveyance, any other non-food thing, सबसे ज़्यादा पैसा वो कहाँ खर्च कर रहे हैं? They are spending highest amount of money on conveyance, which is nothing but transportation, moving from one place to another. It is basically the money which people might be spending on metro tickets, bus travel, air travel, passenger trains, etc. On that, they are spending the major chunk of their money within the non-food. This is the result. I hope it's clear. Let's see इसके implications क्या है. What should we learn from this particular report? Future policy lessons. Let's concentrate here. Food. Let's start with here. For food, the first thing which has happened is people are now spending less money on food, and in particular, people are spending less money on what? Cereals, right? So, some economists have proposed that this is an opportunity to change our PDS, public distribution system. We have separate topic of PDS. I'll bring this dimension once again in the PDS. But do you know any specific committee related to PDS? Public distribution system पे कोई committee का याद है आपको? Good. There's a committee called as Shanta Kumar Committee. In PDS, there was a committee called as Shanta Kumar Committee. This committee had recommended that the coverage of PDS, what percentage of people in India avail PDS? ये तो पता होना चाहिए. National Food Security Act, NFSA, provide food security to what percentage of population? It provides food security to almost 75% of India's population. Shanta Kumar Committee said, you reduce the coverage from present 75% to 60%. Don't you think it's an opportunity for us to reduce the coverage of PDS? I know it is controversial. बिफोर यू टेल मी सर ये कॉन्ट्रोवर्शियल है, लिखना चाहिए नहीं लिखना चाहिए, ये बंदूक चलाना है किसके कंधे पर रखे? शांता कुमार कमेटी, अपने कंधे पे मत रखना. So he, right, Shanta Kumar committee recommended the coverage of beneficiaries has to be reduced from 75 to 60%. Why? Because consumption is increasing, and as it is, people are spending less money on cereals. Apart from that, within PDS, because people are spending less money on cereals like rice and wheat, now people are shifting from rice and wheat to what? More of protein-based foods. One of the most important protein-based food is pulses. So don't you think it's the right time to change what we are providing to people under PDS? Right now, we are providing them rice, wheat and coarse cereals, that is millets. आगे चल के क्या करना चाहिए हमें? We have to include pulses. So this is the time where we can include pulses in the PDS to handle this change in the consumption pattern. So in the handout, you have this reducing the coverage of beneficiaries, right? In the bracket, you can write Shanta Kumar committee. Reducing the coverage of the beneficiaries in the bracket Shanta Kumar committee, 75 to 60%. Rationalization of PDS basket, in the bracket you can write, you have this now, everyone has this, right? Rationalization of PDS basket, in the bracket you can write include pulses. And obviously with respect to agriculture, because people are consuming less cereals, हमें agriculture sector में क्या करना चाहिए? We have to promote more of agricultural diversification, more agriculture diversification. ठीक है? And look at the first point. Change in weightage assigned to food in CPI. Has it already been done? Yes. 45% to 36%. It has already been done in the latest CPI series. The weightage for food has actually got reduced. And if you see within non-food, if people are spending more amount of money on conveyance, what we should do is we have to reduce the transportation cost. If you reduce the transportation cost, the amount of money which people are spending on conveyance will reduce. And this can encourage the people to take up more employment opportunities. Like when you talk about freebies, right? Freebies, one of the freebies, free bus travel. Free bus travel is widely criticized across India, saying that in the long run, it is a kind of freebie and it will affect the transportation system of India. But if I want to see that free bus travel in a positive light, how can I put it in a positive light? I can say that majorly people are spending money on transportation. If you provide for free bus travel for women, it will help us promote more of women employment. The female labor force participation rate in India, which is somewhere around 42%, which is already very low, this can help us to improve that female labor force participation rate. In what way? Or yeah, you can add that. I hope it's clear to everyone. So just go to the entire this page on results, implications and lessons for policy making. Clear है सबको? Okay. Let's move to the next topic now. The next topic is investment. Okay. With respect to this topic, investment, we'll first pick up the basics. Basics about what do you actually mean by investment. Now, why is this topic important is Can you see this previous year mains question? The first part of the question. Explain the meaning of investment in an economy in terms of what? Capital formation. So you're required to explain what do you actually mean by investment and how it leads to capital formation. And read the second part of the question. What is the question about? Concession agreement means matlab? What do you mean by concession agreement? Because unless you don't know what is concession agreement, you cannot write an answer to this. So matlab kya hai? Concession agreement means? No. Concession agreement. No. नहीं नहीं. Huh? No, it's not PLI. नहीं. Huh? नहीं नहीं. Nitya? Anyone? You should know concession agreement is nothing but PPP, public private partnership. Read the second part of the question ना. यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? Between what? Public entity and private entity. An agreement between public entity and private entity को क्या बोलते हैं हम? Public private partnership. The second part of the question is about public private partnership. And you know any specific committee related to public private partnership? Kelkar committee. So you just have to write the Kelkar committee recommendations as to what factors we must consider while designing a PPP. The first part of the question is about what do you actually mean by investment. So this was the question asked. So let's understand what do you mean by investment. I think that's the most important thing. Investment का मतलब क्या है? Investment is nothing but a form of expenditure which can enhance the capacity of economy to produce more goods or services in future. Something which can enhance the capacity of the economy to produce more goods and services in future is nothing but investment. The definition might look a very simple definition, but actually may more complicated hai. I'll just give an example. I am a farmer. I, as a farmer, let's say I am growing rice. I am growing rice. And I, as a farmer, for example, I am planting mango trees. If when I am growing rice, na, rice का production उसी साल हो रहा है. I hope you're getting this point. But when I am planting a mango tree, what happens is I am spending money in both the cases. But when I plant a mango tree, what happens to the capacity of the economy to produce goods and services in future? Increases. So planting a mango tree is what? It's an expenditure. But what kind of expenditure it is? Investment. It's an investment expenditure. Same way, let's say, for example, I have a tea estate. In the year 2025, I had 100 acres of tea estate. In the year 2026, the total area under tea estate is 120 acres. What is the net addition in terms of area under tea estate? The net addition is what? 20 acres. If I have planted additional tea plants of 20 acres, what is this 20 acres का addition क्या होगा ये? Addition क्या होगा ये? investment. So tell me, looking at this example of 20 acres, is it a flow concept or a stock concept? Take your time. ये 120 acres क्या है? Stock है. But investment is not 120 acres. Investment is what? Net addition. Net addition is not 120. Net addition is what? 20 acres. So, when I say expenditure which can enhance the capacity of the economy to produce more goods and services, it is not the total expenditure. It is the additional investment, additional expenditure that you do. Whatever additional expenditure that you do in 1 year, which can increase the capacity of the economy to produce more goods and services, that we call it as investment. In a way, investment को हम ये भी बोलते हैं net addition to the existing stock of what? Capital assets. I hope in the textbook you must have come across the definition, right? It's always a net addition to the existing stock of capital assets. So investment is not a stock concept. Investment is a flow concept. Is that part clear to everyone? Okay. So if you want to find out whether something is part of investment or not, आपको बस you have to ask yourself one question. The question that you have to ask yourself is, will it enhance the capacity of the economy to produce more goods and services in future or not? If the answer to that question is yes, then it will always be considered as investment. So what we generally do, investment, we call it as GCF, gross capital formation, which is written as gross fixed capital formation, plus it is changes in inventories plus net acquisition of valuables. But concentrate on this gross fixed capital formation. When we say gross fixed capital formation, in the gross fixed capital formation, what we have, number one, you have capital assets. Basically like road, railways, port, airport, etc. Second, what we have is capital goods or machinery, because machinery will help us to produce more goods. Apart from this, we have investment in what? Research and development. Can you see R&D? Can you look at the definition? क्या बोलता है? Enhance the capacity of the economy to produce more goods and services in future. In R&D, we might not be producing goods and services, but it is enhancing our capacity to do so. Same way, increment in cultivated biological resources and livestock. Now this is quite interesting. Increment in cultivated biological resources and livestock. Now for example, when I say, look at the word, increment in what? Cultivated biological resources. What can be that biological resource जिसके increment से ज़्यादा goods बढ़ सकते हैं आगे चल के? हाँ? GM crops नहीं. Can I say tea plantation? I just give an example. What is tea plantation, by the way? Tea plantation is nothing but a kind of biological or natural resource. इससे बढ़ने से क्या होगा? हमारा और ज़्यादा production बढ़ेगा. Or I can say coffee plantation, or for that matter what? Rubber plantation. Production of rice and wheat production of rice and wheat is never considered as increment because वो एक साल ही रहेगा. But if you increase the area under tea plantation, coffee plantation, rubber plantation, the increase in area will help us to produce more tea, coffee and rubber in future. So whatever additional area is increased, that is considered as investment. Look at the second part, increment in what? Livestock. For example, in the year 2025, we had 100 cows in India. In the year 2026, if we have 150 cows, what is the increment here? Increment is 50 cows. If the number of cows increases, what will happen to production of milk? Production of milk will increase. Can you see the second definition of the investment? It is what? Net addition to the existing stock of assets. Existing stock of assets कितने थे हमारे पास? 100. Net addition कितना हुआ है अभी? 50. So tell me, this 50 is a flow or stock concept? Flow concept. That is how you should be able to know this. Take your time. Just if you have any specific doubt in this understanding the concept of investment, please feel free to ask. Because this was a question which was explicitly asked in the previous year mains. And you know, writing an answer to such a question has very finer nuances. And you should be able to display those nuances in your answer. Like you should be able to use this keyword about cultivated biological resources and livestock. Or you should be able to use this word net addition. And most importantly, in your answer, you should specifically and explicitly mention that investment is always a flow concept. It is always an addition to the existing stock. Yeah, capital formation. When the government gives grant, that will not be accounted. But when the grant is spent on research and development, that will get accounted. If you account both, उससे क्या होगा? Double counting हो जाएगा. We will not account it as government expenditure. We will account it as GCF. I hope this part is clear to everyone. Okay. Now, having understood the basics about investment, let's look into the specific trends. I did tell you that if you know the trends for savings, the trends for investment is also same. It has got reduced from 34% to 30%. It was in the year 2011-12, and this is the data that we have for 23-24. This 30% investment can be done either by public sector or by the private sector. Without looking at the handout, can you guess whose share is higher? What does the intuition say? Who is spending more? Public is 10% and private is, how much it is? 20%. So who is spending major chunk of money on investment? It is the private sector. Can you see all of this? Capital assets, capital goods, research and development, this, changes in inventories, ये majorly कहाँ पे आएगा? Private sector में ना? But out of these component, there is one component in which the public sector has disproportionately higher share. Yes, it is what? Capital assets. Capital assets means what are we including here? Here we are including what? Infrastructure. Construction of roads, railways, ports, airports. In that infrastructure, the share of private sector is less and the share of public sector is high. Otherwise, in each other component, it is the dominance of the private sector. Okay. since the overall investment rate has got reduced from 34 to 30, it means either the public sector investment or private sector investment may have got reduced. You can see the handout. किसका शेयर कम हुआ है, पब्लिक का या प्राइवेट का? प्राइवेट सेक्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट which was around 25%, from 25% it has got reduced to 20%. So whatever 4% reduction that you are seeing here is because of share decline in the share of private sector investment. Can I say the overall investment rate would have further got reduced had the public sector not increased its investment? क्योंकि ये private sector investment कितना कम हुआ है, by what percentage? 5% कम हुआ है, and ये कितना percentage कम हुआ है? 4%. It means किसका 1% increase हुआ है? Public sector. And which is quite evident also, no? Last few years, especially after COVID, the government has started spending more amount of money on capital expenditure. Fine so far? Okay. In your handout, there is space for a diagram. What diagram can you make? The same diagram that we covered for savings. If you could remember the diagram. The only thing is here, who has to be put in the driving seat now? Investment. So diagram would be something like this. You make investment. With increase in investment, what happens to GDP? GDP increases. Income will increase. Increase in income is higher than increase in expenditure, because of which savings will increase and investment will increase. Okay. Just check your notes in the last thing about savings. If you look at the cycle there, cycle कहाँ से start हो रहा था वहाँ पे? There the cycle was starting with what? Savings. But यहाँ पे cycle कहाँ से start होगा? Investment. I think just the placement which has got changed, but otherwise everything else is same. So it is also called as the virtuous economic cycle. Virtuous economic cycle. Okay. Do not see the handout. Close the handout and try to generate points as to why do we need investment-led economy? Why should India focus on investment-led? If you have at least 5 to 6 points, you can raise your hand. Take your time. Try to generate points in your rough. Why do we need investment? You know the framework, you know everything. Just generate the points now. Yes, anyone? 4 to 5 points? That you can write with respect to problems with consumption-led model, right? Then what else? Huh? It can help us to promote trade competitiveness, that is boost our exports. Then it can have a multiplier effect, right? Good. Huh? sustainable. It will be more sustainable, unlike the present model, which is considered to be unsustainable. Higher quality of fiscal deficit, because the government is spending more money on investment as compared to consumption. It means we will be able to fulfill the golden fiscal rule, and will also improve the quality of fiscal deficit. Then it can solve the structural problems of agriculture, manufacturing, and help us promote more investment in the infrastructure sector. By skill development, human capital formation will increase. We can spend more money on education, health, skill set of the people, which we are actually doing it as part of the new welfare approach. In the new welfare approach, rather than spending money on RE, we are spending more money on CE, capital expenditure. Huh? Which one? We can promote more FDI and FPI from the external sector. See, ultimately, just look at the points that you have written about problems with consumption-led model. Can you just reverse those problems to highlight that these are the benefits of investment-led model? The thing here is, you know the framework. If one, you are writing the problems, उस problems को reverse करके आप points लिखोगे तो वो क्या होगा? वो investment-led model का advantages होगा. As simple as that. So write down. First, you can see, promotes self-sustaining virtuous economic cycle. Put a hyphen and write. Increase in investment. Increase in investment promotes savings. Increase in investment promotes GDP growth. Increase in investment promotes GDP growth and hence higher savings. And hence higher savings. इसको explain करने के लिए you have the flow chart already, the diagram that you have. Realizing vision of Viksit Bharat. You can put a hyphen and write. Investment rate must increase to at least 40%. Investment rate must increase to at least 40% to become Viksit Bharat. To become Viksit Bharat. Next, problems with consumption-led model, right? Put a hyphen and write. Unsustainable in the long run due to fall in the demographic dividend. Unsustainable in the long run due to the fall in the demographic dividend. Due to fall in the demographic dividend. Next, investment needs in infrastructure. Put a hyphen and write. 143 lakh crores. 143 lakh crores by 2030. So we need this much amount of money by 2030 for infrastructure, and that will come from investment. Pursue export-led model. Put a hyphen and write. Increase in exports. Increase in exports and decrease in imports. Enhances productivity in the form of higher investment in education, health, in the form of higher investment in education, health, skill set, etc. Promote inclusive growth through job creation, and increase in income level. Through job creation and increase in the income levels. Next, enhances the quality of fiscal deficit as the government would spend more money. As the government would spend more money on capital expenditure, leading to fulfillment of golden fiscal rule. Leading to the fulfillment of the golden fiscal rule. addresses structural problems in agriculture, manufacturing, etc. यहाँ पे कोई एग्जाम्पल दे सकता है? स्ट्रक्चरल प्रॉब्लम इन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, poor research and development. Good. Then anything else? If I could tell you what's the biggest problem that you're facing in the manufacturing sector now? I think right now we have to focus on new age technologies within the manufacturing sector, especially the Industrial Revolution 4.0. Yes, we need to focus on the sunrise sectors, specifically like semiconductor manufacturing. And semiconductor manufacturing, you must have read in multiple sources, is considered to be highly capital intensive. Where will you get the capital? From the investment-led model. That is how you link investment-led model to your agriculture sector, link investment-led model to your manufacturing sector. That is how you should be able to interlink the topics. You can just write the example. Okay. Means is about generating points. On one side, it will create jobs. Yes. Like if you invest more money on construction of roads, railways, port, airport, etc., it will create jobs. You invest the money in terms of semiconductor manufacturing, it will make our manufacturing sector more resilient. So it's not that the entire money we're going to spend on only on semiconductor manufacturing, right? We will have our priorities accordingly. We'll spend money on infrastructure also, in semiconductor manufacturing also. Okay, so you can write that example, semiconductor manufacturing or cold storage in agriculture. This is how you need to add value to your answers. Like if you just write address structural problems of agriculture, might not help. Or address structural problems of manufacturing might not help. You give a specific example like I gave, semiconductor manufacturing. So it particularly will impress the examiner, because the examiner will be able to relate कि semiconductor manufacturing capital intensive and उसका पैसा कहाँ से आएगा? Investment led model से. Fine so far? Okay. Now, without looking at your handout once again, I told you that private sector investment in India has been reducing. Earlier, it was around 25%. From 25%, the share of private sector investment has got reduced to 20%. This is from economic survey 2 years back. 2 years back, the economic survey said enabling investment-led economic growth. That is what we have covered already. Look at that. Hindu, April 2024. In the Hindu, you used to have this explain section, and that explain section you have this, why have private investment dropped? Now, sometimes, when you want to write answer to this question about why has private investment dropped, you'll not be able to generate enough points. I'll tell you a framework as to how you can generate points without actually knowing the reason also. But take your time, try to generate points on your own first, and then I'll help you to generate more points. क्या हुआ होगा कि private investment कम हुआ है इंडिया में? I know what is the first point that you're getting in your mind. Poor ease of doing business. पर वो सबसे last होना चाहिए. Not the first point. Something else. But in general, they should be actually making investment in one or other places, right? Why has the overall investment dropped? Okay. Here, आपको क्या करना है? You should start thinking like an economist or a student of economy. क्या सोचना है? अगर private sector investment कम हुआ है, you should ask yourself, private sector is getting money from somewhere. From where is the private sector getting money from? सबसे पहले कहाँ से पैसा आएगा? Saving से आएगा ना पैसा. First thing, the private sector will get money is from the households. That's the first thing. If they are not getting money from households, what else they will do? They will borrow money from either banks or NBFCs. If they're not getting money from banks and NBFCs, they will get money from where? Capital market. If they are not getting money from the domestic sources, from where else will they get the money from? They will get money from the external sector. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 points are ready. You just have to link it to what has happened in the recent past. Apart from that, private sector has money. Private sector has capital. But to make investment, what do you think is a major factor? पैसा है फिर भी आप इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहते हो. Why? Yes? No, I'm talking about the private sector. Let's say you're an entrepreneur. You're into manufacturing of goods and services. You have money to invest, but you're reluctant to make invest. सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट आप क्या देखोगे? आप देखोगे ना डिमांड क्या है. पैसा है आपके पास, बट आप देखोगे कि मार्केट में डिमांड है या नहीं फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. यू लुक एट द डिमांड. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, कैन आई से you'll also look at how stable the macro economy is, not just in India, but you'll also look at the stability at a global level. Based upon these factors, you'll decide whether to invest money or not. Do you get the point? I'll just give one or examples here to prove this thing. Let's talk about stability. Let's say I'm a company called as Foxconn. You know what Foxconn does? Foxconn is into manufacturing of iPhones. After we manufacture iPhones, what we do? We export these iPhones to US market. So I, as a Foxconn, I know for sure that I can produce more iPhones, and after production of these iPhones, I can export these iPhones to US. Suddenly one fine day, out of blue, Trump tweets something on social media. He tweets that soon US will start imposing additional custom duty on iPhones imported from India. He has not taken any policy decision. He has just tweeted something on social media. If I am a Foxconn, I will be very, very worried. Because if I increase my production of iPhone and later if Trump increases the custom duty, I'll find it very difficult to export. I have money. There is demand. But still I will not manufacture. I will wait until Trump gives me a clarity whether the customs duty will be increased or not. Sometimes you have money, you have demand. What is also equally important is clarity, certainty about the future. If things are bleak in future, people will never invest. Now tell me what has happened in the recent past in last 2 to 3 years, especially at a global level. There's so much of uncertainty about the global economic prospects. Have money, but people are holding on to money rather than investing because of that kind of uncertainty. Clear with this? We'll come to that. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. ये हम यहाँ पे देखेंगे. One by one we'll think. What do you think about the demand? क्या होगा demand? During COVID, the demand actually dropped significantly. Immediately after COVID, for 1 year, immediately after COVID, for 1 year, the demand zoomed like this. That demand which zoomed, we call it as pent up demand. Pent up demand हुआ 21-22 में. But after 21-22, the consumption expenditure in India started to reduce. That is one of the reasons why last year the government has taken so many steps to increase the consumption expenditure. So right from 22 onwards, consumption expenditure has been falling. With respect to external sector, what's the biggest thing is, if you look at the gross FDI inflows into India, gross FDI inflows into India has dropped because of the global uncertainty. India's ranking in terms of attracting FDI has dropped. Apart from that, what has also happened is there is more repatriation of profits by foreign multinational companies. Foreign multinational companies, rather than investing their money in India, whatever profits they are earning, they are taking it back. One reason is, once again, क्या है? Demand कम हुआ है इंडिया में, and दूसरा क्या है? The macroeconomic instability at a global level. If Foxconn is earning profit in India, earlier that profit would have invested in India. Now, because of Trump policies, whatever profits Foxconn earns, what will it do? It will go and take it back to Taiwan. I hope you understood this point. Apart from that, if you look at Indian companies, what are Indian companies doing? Whatever money they have, rather than investing that money in India, they are investing that money outside India, जिसको हम बोलते हैं outward FD. What is the problem here? Capital market or IPO market is booming. We have the largest IPOs last year. So what's the main problem in the capital market? It is basically, the problem is in the bond market. Remember in the last class we discussed a fact related to bond market. What is the size of bond market in India? Very good. It is 18% of GDP. What is the bond market in China? 36% of China's GDP. In South Korea, it is how much? 80%. Bond market is underdeveloped. You know, when foreign investment is not coming into India, what should we have relied on? We should have relied on our bond market, but bond market is underdeveloped. Banks and NBFCs का क्या problem था last one decade में? Remember in the last class we covered this problem, TBS, twin balance sheet problem. Right from 2013 to until 2023, for almost one decade, the NPAs of the banks and NBFCs was higher. And think of COVID. During COVID, even though banks had money, banks were reluctant to give money in the fear that their NPAs further increase. Household का क्या हुआ है? Savings rate. Savings rate has got reduced from 34 to 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. You have your framework ready for why the private sector investment has got reduced. But we are talking about decline in private sector investment from 2011-12 to until now. So we are talking about one decade, right? So ये वाला point आप बाद में लिख सकते हो, but this point should be there. Fine so far, everyone? So please write. Decline in consumption expenditure. Put a hyphen and write. Consumption expenditure has been declining since 2022. Since 2022, leading to fall in investment. Leading to fall in investment. Leading to fall in investment. Second, poor financial position of the banks. Put a hyphen and write. Between 2013 to 2023, between 2013 to 2023, comma, the NPAs of Indian banks, the NPAs of Indian banks was around 10 to 13%. 10 to 13%. In the bracket, twin balance sheet problem. Twin balance sheet problem. Twin balance sheet problem. Next, higher cost of capital. Put a hyphen and write. Now this is the latest thing. This year's economic survey, I'll just explain this. This year's economic survey. Okay. So this year's economic survey has compared the cost of capital in India with other countries, and it has said that the cost of capital in India is higher. And one of the main reason why the cost of capital in India is higher is because we can get the capital either within India or we can get the capital from outside India. What economic survey has pinpointed is because we have less capital in India, we are required to rely more on foreign capital. And if we get more foreign capital, we would have to offer them a higher interest rate to attract the foreign capital. Automatically उससे क्या होगा हमारा cost of capital is increasing. For example, when we issue bonds, right, to the foreign investors, on those bonds we would have to offer them a higher coupon rate as compared to other countries, which will increase the cost of capital. I hope you understood. So right, higher cost of capital in the bracket, economic survey 25-26, economic survey 25-26, bracket close. Lower domestic capital, lower domestic capital, lower domestic capital has led to increased reliance, has led to increased reliance on the costly foreign capital, on the costly foreign capital. Next one, for the underdeveloped bond market, you can write, you know the data, India it is 18%, China it is 36%, South Korea it is 80%. South Korea 80%. Okay. Next, decline in net FDI inflows. For that you can write first point, that's our next topic. First point you can write repatriation of profits by foreign MNCs. Repatriation of profits by foreign multinational companies. Second one, increase in outward FDI by Indian companies. Increase in outward FDI by Indian companies. Next you can write external shocks. Number one, decline in the gross FDI inflows. Decline in the gross FDI inflows. And second point under the same thing, economic uncertainty. Economic uncertainty such as trade wars has discouraged investment. Example you can write Trump's tariff policy. Example, Trump's tariff policies. So far so clear? Okay. Please flip the page. Okay, what should be the conclusion to this question on investment led? क्या conclusion होना चाहिए? Should India focus on investment? Yes, India should focus on investment. India need to shift from consumption to investment. But at the same time, can I also say that India should be cautious of not ending up replicating someone else's model, China's model? Yes, we should go for investment, but not such that we end up replicating China's model. Ki over investment will lead to over capacity, and India might slip into a deflation, just like what China is going through. That is the way forward that you should write. So always there's a need to maintain a fine balance between consumption and investment. Okay, just flip the page, read the question. India needs to pursue investment-led model to become $7 trillion economy, argue. Also discuss the reasons for the fall in private sector investment in the last decade. Try it out. How many parts the question is? कितने parts है question के? 3 parts. कौन कौन से हैं? नहीं. Body of the answer will have how many dimensions? 2 dimensions. Which are those 2 dimensions? One, why do we need a investment-led model? And the second one is, what are the challenges with what are the reasons for the fall in the private sector? Is there any correcting dimension between the two? कोई connecting dimension डाल सकते हो आप दोनों के बीच में? You're talking about why we need to follow investment-led model, followed by why the private sector investment has fallen. What could be that connecting dimension? The best connecting dimension here, because you're talking about why the private sector investment has fallen, the best thing is to start about what is the present trend with respect to private sector investment. वो आपका connecting dimension होना चाहिए. So before you write that these are the reasons for the fall in the private sector investment, you say that private sector investment has declined from what percent? 25% to 20% in the last decade. That becomes a connecting dimension. If you don't write that and simply write the reasons for fall, it's not going to make a lot of meaning. I hope you're getting this point. Understood? Which one? The first dimension you're writing, why do we need investment-led model? The second dimension you're writing is, what are the reasons for the fall in the private sector investment? Between these two dimensions, one small dimension that you can add is a trend with respect to private sector investment. Before you write that private sector investment has fallen, the reasons for that, you should write ki how much it has fallen. Okay. And what's the introduction? Introduction is the best ways you can start off with the present trend with respect to investment. But there's a statement in the question also. So you need to have a second statement, and the second statement should be able to explain the statement given in the question. What do you think that second statement could be? हाँ? क्या हो सकता है second statement? Good. A structural shift from consumption-led model to investment-led model. I'll just show you. So as it is, you'll start with the present status. PFC is accounting for around 60% of GDP, while investment rate is around 30%. And then this line is important. As highlighted by economic survey, India needs to shift from consumption-led to investment-led model to pursue virtuous economic cycle. This second statement is able to explain the first statement given in the question. After that, in the body, why should India shift to investment-led model? And in the second, reasons for fall. And what I was trying to tell you, between these two, you have to write one thing, that the private sector investment has fallen from 25% to 20% in the last decade. Once you write this, we can talk about some of the recent initiatives to promote private investment. Do you know any recent initiative to promote more private sector investment? Any 2 to 3 examples? Yes, we have provided for tax rebates. You must be knowing corporate tax. We have reduced the corporate tax rates. Then, have you come out with any major initiative in infrastructure to promote private sector investment? Infrastructure. Bharatmala, Sagarmala, Gati Shakti. There are so many initiatives that you know about infrastructure. Write some 2 to 3 initiatives. No need to go in detail, just some initiative. See, whenever you write challenges, it is always good to add the initiatives which the government has taken to address this. Uske baad, finally, strategies and implications. You can just read through this part. Going forward, we should encourage private sector investment through systematic deregulation, deepening of the bond market. For the bond market, there is a committee called as HR Khan Committee, about which we will be covering. PPP reforms. I told you PPP reforms is based upon Kelkar. And can you see here the word which I've used? आपने सुना होगा ये word. These are kind of keywords that you have to use in your answers. Doing so would revive animal spirits. What do you mean by animal spirits? Risk-taking culture. If you want private sector to make more investment, we need to revive that risk-taking culture among the private sector. So doing so would revive animal spirits and put India on the path of long-term, sustainable and inclusive growth. You just incorporate this conclusion. I think I hope everyone has got the introduction right. Body of the answer right. The only thing is about the conclusion. When I say, see, what you can do, most of you write this keyword, improve the ease of doing business. It has become quite common across everyone. Everyone is writing the same word, improve the ease of doing business. A much better word is systematic deregulation. This word has been used by last year's economic survey. So this is a key word that you can remember, systematic deregulation. That is improving the ease of doing business. You can write that also. You can write that in the conclusion. But यहाँ पे, where is your answer ending with? Your answer is ending with reasons for fall in private sector investment. Your conclusion should be a logical extension to this part, right? Suddenly you're writing reasons for fall in private sector investment in the body of the answer, and in the conclusion you're talking about India should not follow China's model. That does not look logically coherent. For example, if there was no second part of the question, if the question was only about why should India pursue a investment-led model, what should I focus upon? Why India focus on investment-led model? उसका conclusion क्या better हो सकता था? China का. But body's second dimension is focusing on reasons for fall in private sector investment. This is more logically correlated. Okay? Fine. It's already 11:30. We'll take a break. 10 minutes. Once we come back, we'll cover the rest of the topics. Okay? Uh-huh. Which words, by the way? I did not get your question.
Forum is starting a residential program and specifically designed for those students who didn't clear prelims earlier. At that moment, I felt that this program is tailor-made for you because what you described in that email, it felt like somebody was describing me.
Fortunately, sir, I cleared prelims. And then, sir, the same schedule for mains, FRC4 started at the same place. And again, I made the same promise. चाहे वो AWFG का टेस्ट हो या SFG का हो या करंट अफेयर्स की क्लास हो, I'll do it. सब कुछ करूँगा जैसा जैसा मुझे बताया जा रहा है. And fortunately, it worked again. Then I stayed there for interview also. And fortunately, I got the rank. तो फोरम तो एट लेटर स्टेज आया, बट आई बिलीव अगर मेरे पास फोरम की गाइडेंस अगर पहले होती और FRC की गाइडेंस पहले होती तो शायद इतना लंबा टाइम मुझे वेट नहीं करना पड़ता.
मेल आया था FRC का, तो मेरे को अच्छा लगा कि जो सेटअप था वो अच्छा था कि जिससे 11th-12th में पढ़ते थे ना कि जबरदस्ती पढ़ाया जाएगा, वो था. तो मैंने कहा ये तो बेस्ट है. अगर ये पहले होता तो काफी अच्छा हो जाता, तो मतलब इतना टाइम नहीं लगता.
And before coming to FRC, literally there was a lot of broken confidence, and I thought I would never be able to clear pre. This is the biggest hurdle of my life. But then, ever since December, things changed, and I just followed the plan to the hilt. Gave every test, even the open test, all the simulators, the CSAT simulators also. It was for the first time that I cleared the prelims, I cleared the mains, and then I cleared the interview and finally got a job under Government of India. I was a part of FRC 1 and FRC 4. So I think FRC played an instrumental role in making me what I am today.
So first, many congratulations to all of you who have cleared the prelims. Let us give them a big hand.
I subscribed to the second level of SFG. I think I told you, sir. I had gotten to know about sir from a very close friend, which was honestly like my paradigmatic change, if you will call it, towards prelims preparation came when I heard sir speak on prelims.
मेरा नाम डॉक्टर आकांक्षा सिंह है. मैं गाज़ीपुर ज़िले से रहने वाली हूँ. मैं ऐसे पेशे से डॉक्टर हूँ. मैंने MBBS और मास्टर्स कर रखी है. मैं गायनाकोलॉजिस्ट हूँ. ये मेरा सेकंड अटैम्प्ट था जिसमें मेरी 301 रैंक आई है UPSC CSE 2025 में.
%65% of IS toppers under rank 10 and 20 in CSE 2025 final list have been students of Mains Guidance Program MGP by ForumIAS Academy, including rank 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19. Mains Guidance Program MGP 2026-27. Join Mains Guidance Program, India's most trusted program for mains preparation. To know more about MGP, speak to an IS topper near you or email us at contact@forumias.com.
Okay, let's move to the next topic. The next topic here is about decline in the net FDI into India. So, with respect to this topic, let's look at a question asked in previous year mains. This was a question asked with the context of FDI. You can see the question. The first question was, justify the need for FDI for the development of Indian economy. Second part of the question, why there's a gap between MOU signed and the actual FDI. Suggest remedial steps to be taken for increasing FDIs into India. Can you try to answer the first part of the question? The first part of the question is justify the need for FDI for the development of Indian economy. Take your time. You have 30 seconds. Try to generate at least 4 to 5 points as to why do you think India needs more FDI. The answers are right there in your head. The answers are right there in your head. Huh? To bridge the gap between domestic savings and the investment. Good. Then? Huh? Technology transfer. Good. FDI is more stable. Then? That's it. Huh? Hint for you is ये already हमने discuss किया है, but not explicitly as a topic of FDI. Go and check your notes on need for investment-led economy. Just see need for investment-led economy. Can you pick up some points from there? Increase jobs. Good. The virtuous cycle. Good. Then? More infrastructure. Then? Productivity. Then? Like he was using the point of technology. You can link technology to what? Productivity. And says that increase transfer of technology may help us to improve our productivity of the economy. Whatever points that we have covered with respect to why we need investment-led economy, some of those points you can fine-tune it to say ki why we need FDI. That's it. Okay? Okay. Anyways, just pay attention. This particular chart shows the trends in terms of gross FDI and the net FDI. The blue color line shows as to what has actually happened to the gross FDI in India. You can see the gross FDI in India dropped somewhere around COVID time. This one dropped. After being dropping, suddenly for 1 year, it has increased. And it has increased to somewhere around $81 billion. So the amount of FDI which is coming into India for 1 year, it is somewhere around $70 to $80 billion. In the last 2 to 3 years, it dropped, but for the year 24-25, it has picked up to reach around $81 billion. And can you tell me what is the remittances into India worth? It is around 125. So if you compare remittances with FDI, our remittances are much higher. Gross FDI to bada hai, very by small margin. But the problem is with respect to the net FDI. Can you see this drastic fall in our net FDI? A sudden and exponential fall. It is being said that this net FDI into India has reduced by a whopping 96% in the last 1 year. In 1 year, reduction of 96% is considered to be too big actually. ये बहुत बड़ा है. So that is what we are going to discuss as to why the net FDI into India has fallen. Government says it is not a matter of concern. In fact, RBI has published a report saying that we need not be worried about fall in the net FDI. But a number of economists have raised concerns that this fall in the net FDI is a cause of concern. So based upon that, you may get a question about whether this is a cause of concern or not, and what are the reasons for the fall in the net FDI. That's what I'm going to cover. Everything is there in your handout. You just pay attention. At most, it can be asked for 10 marks, not for 15 marks. Sabse pehle, let's understand the basics. FDI. When we say gross FDI, I hope in your prelims module you have studied what is FDI. Number one, it should be investment of how much? 10%. In what? In the shares of listed company. Second, it should be in the form of shares of a unlisted company. But always FDI is accompanied by investment in what? Shares. It is always investment in shares. Apart from these two, the third component of FDI is reinvested earnings. Reinvested earnings means if a foreign company has earned profit, and that profit which it has earned in India, if it's reinvest, even though the money is not coming from outside India, it is still considered to be part of gross FDI. I hope it's understood. Gross FDI. जैसे कि Foxconn ने profit बनाया, that profit it has invested in India. Money is not coming from outside India. It's a money coming within India. Still, it is considered to be gross. When you see this money, FDI into unlisted company, can you tell me in what form does it normally come? किस form में आता है ये? Like it is coming into a form of shares, right? What are these companies? What are they called as? When they invest in shares of startup companies. Good. We call them as venture capital funds. Or you must have also heard, we also call them as private equity. So companies which are investing in shares of startups, unlisted companies, we call them as venture capital fund or the private equity. In case of listed companies, what are they actually doing? They are coming to India, and within India, they are actually setting up, yes, physical presence. In case of unlisted, they may or may not establish physical presence, but predominantly they are providing capital to startups in the form of through either venture capital or private equity. So far so clear? Okay. When you see net FDI, it is calculated as gross FDI minus repatriation of profits by the foreign multinational companies. If foreign multinational companies reinvest their profit, it is part of gross. If they take out their profit, we'll deduct that profit from the gross to arrive at a net FDI. Plus, इसमें हम क्या करेंगे? Add करेंगे outward FDI. Now what we are saying is net FDI into India has got reduced. By what extent it has got reduced? 96% in just one single year. It's an exponential fall in the net FDI. But what has happened to gross FDI last year, 24-25? Increased or decreased? It has increased by a small amount. So what are the reasons basically? That is what we're getting into. Okay? Let's concentrate on the first thing. When you see this gross FDI, I told you FDI can be in the form of listed company, and FDI can also come in the form of unlisted companies. It has so happened in the past few years, particularly 3 to 4 years, India has seen a boom in the startup culture. So particularly in last 3 to 4 years, it has so happened that almost around 75% of our FDI, 70 to 70%, it keeps soaring. 75% of our FDI is coming through either venture capital funds or the private equity. Now, what do you think is better? FDI in listed companies or FDI into unlisted companies? Both are good basically, but better क्या है? Listed better है. The reason is very simple. There you see the actual attributes of FDI. When I say actual attributes of FDI is, FDI involves transfer of capital, FDI involves transfer of technology, FDI involves transfer of management. In unlisted companies, when they're giving capital to startups, it is essentially a transfer of only the capital only. 75% of FDI is in the form of venture capital or private equity. And the problem here is, यहाँ पे इनका exit बहुत आसान होता है. It is very easy for them to exit. Here, if I am a foreign company, I am coming into India and I'm establishing a physical presence in India. If I'm making loss in 1 or 2 years, I will still continue to bear the loss. If I make profit, that additional profit I may decide to reinvest. But if I'm a foreign entity who is investing in an unlisted company, if my profits is increasing, I will think like a shareholder. Imagine you purchase the share and the share price has increased. What will you try to do? Sell off the share and get back. So when people are providing capital to startups, people are providing capital in the anticipation that its price will increase, and as soon as the price increases, they can take back their capital. And how will they take back the capital? Yes, what has happened in India? Large number of startup companies have come up with IPO, initial public offer. And if you know, in IPO, in the Prelims module probably must have studied, there are 2 types of IPOs. One is fresh issue of shares, when we issue new shares. And the other type of IPO is called as offer for sale. What happens in offer for sale is the existing shareholders are selling their shares. Imagine there's a foreign company which has invested in unlisted company in the form of venture capital or private equity. The valuation of startup company increases. As soon as the valuation increases, the startup company goes for IPO. उनका profit क्या होगा? Their profit will increase. Initially, they must have invested 10 rupees. Now the company goes for IPO, they might get 100 rupees. It is the best time for them to exit. So they will go for offer for sale. Majority of IPOs in India are what? Offer for sale. Did you get the point? Everyone? And the third thing is, we are witnessing a phenomena about which we'll be covering separately. The phenomena that we are witnessing is called as geo-economic fragmentation. Look at the word geo. Geo means geography plus economy. Geo-economic fragmentation means, earlier what used to happen, when FDI used to flow from one country to another country, the flow of FDI was purely based upon what reasons? Economic reasons. Think of US based companies. Predominantly वो कहाँ invest करते थे? US based companies. China में. Why they used to invest in China? Because it is cheaper to manufacture in China. But now, flow of FDI is no longer guided by economic factors. It is a combination of economic factors as well as what factors? Geo-strategic factors. Like a American capital which was earlier going to China will not go to China, rather American capital will go to other friendly countries or other neighboring countries. You may have heard about these kind of terms: friend shoring or near shoring. Because of these reasons, what is happening to gross FDI coming into India? The gross FDI coming into India is reducing, even though it has increased, but the extent of increase is not very high. So these are the reasons why this thing has happened. I hope this part is clear to everyone. ठीक है? यहाँ पे दोनों के में क्या हुआ है? We covered this already. What has happened to repatriation of profits by foreign companies? It has increased. क्या रीजन हो सकता है? Why it has increased? Why are they taking out more profits from India, not reinvesting that profit in India? Huh? Major chunk is in the form of private equity. One. What about the normal people, like normal listed companies? Why are they taking back the profit? You need to link it to the fall in private sector investment. Number one, what has happened to demand? Demand has got reduced. What has happened to economic uncertainty at a global level? Increased. So, lack of demand within India and global economic uncertainty is dissuading the foreign multinational companies from reinvesting their profit in India. जो हमारे कंपनीज हैं, इंडियन कंपनीज, वो क्या कर रहे हैं? दे आर गोइंग एंड सेटिंग अप बेसेस आउटसाइड इंडिया. Predominantly, they are setting up their bases in countries like Singapore. The reason why it is happening is RBI has adopted liberal outward FDI rules, which has made it very easy for the Indian companies to invest outside India. Clear with that? So you can see how many reasons you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just check your handout. All of you check your handout. You can see the first point, nature of FDI inflow. 75% of FDI comes through private equity or venture capital funds, which enable investors to exit easily. Increase in repatriation of profits. Increase in outward FDI. Geo-economic fragmentation, increase in IPOs. There's one word, model BIT. We'll cover what is this model BIT, which is our next topic. Don't worry about it. Is it clear, everyone? Fine. Okay, you may pay attention. Now, this is the most interesting thing. Even though net FDI has fallen, government as well as RBI say that we should not be unnecessarily worried about the fall in the net FDI. Let's see the logic. What logic is the RBI giving? I'm directly discussing from the RBI's report. Read the first line which is mentioned in the handout. What is RBI's point of view? What is the first point of view of the RBI? It says increase in the gross FDI. यहाँ पे हम बात कर रहे हैं नेट एफडीआई का. आरबीआई बोल रहा है नेट एफडीआई को क्यों देख रहे हो आप? ग्रॉस एफडीआई को देखो. ग्रॉस एफडीआई तो बढ़ गया है, which I obviously don't find it very logical. Obviously it's not logical, right? But आंसर में लिखना है आपको. You have to write this as an answer. It's a kind of fodder point और कुछ नहीं है. So RBI says why should we be worried about it? Let's think about gross FDI. At least the gross FDI has increased. Let's think about this. That's the first point. Read the second point. Decline in net FDI should be seen as, the first point says, outcome of the strong growth. Okay, let's see what is RBI trying to say here. What RBI is trying to say is, people have invested their money. Once people have invested their money, on that investment people have made profit. And if people have made profit, it is quite natural that people will try to realize their profit. People will try to sell their shares and try to realize the profit. What economists are saying is that people are selling shares. What RBI is saying, do not see that people are selling shares. See that why people are selling the shares. Why are people selling the shares? People are selling shares because people are actually making profit. Perspective is different. Economists are saying, देखो लोग shares बेच रहे हैं. RBI बोल रहा है, वो क्यों देख रहे हो, ये देखो कि शेयर्स क्यों बेच रहे हैं. शेयर्स क्यों बेच रहे हैं? बिकॉज प्रॉफिट बना रहे हैं. ये तो अच्छा बात है. Did you get what I'm trying to say? And why are share prices increasing, by the way? It shows a strong economic growth of the economy. Second point, signs of maturing investment ecosystem. What is the meaning of signs of maturing ecosystem? You always think of VCF, private equity. They are they are profit oriented. Their agenda is never ever to come and establish their physical presence in India. Their agenda is very simple and sorted. They provide capital to startup companies. The startup company grows. The startup company's valuation increases. The startup company goes for IPO. As soon as the startup company goes for IPO, whatever money they have invested, they take out their money. And that is how they make profit. So what RBI is saying is that it's a good thing that these private equities and venture capital funds are making profit, because it shows that our startup ecosystem is booming. They are rapidly growing. It's a good investment ecosystem. I hope it's clear. Third point is very interesting. Sign of free market. Let's see what is RBI's argument here. RBI ये बोलना चाहता है, RBI is trying to say everyone is seeing कि whatever money which the foreign companies have invested, what are they doing? They are taking out their profits. RBI says it is good. Why? What do you think? Why it is good according to RBI? Huh? So what RBI is trying to say, if we allow them to take out their profit freely, they'll come back once again to invest, because they have a confidence that anytime they invest in India, they make profit, they will take out the profit, and they know that they can come once again back. It's as good as saying, if I'm a foreign investor, I invest my money in India, I make my profit, I take out the profit, but after few time, like after few days, whatever money which I have got it, invariably where will I come and invest now? I'll come and invest back in India. So what RBI is trying to say, why are you seeing कि money is going out of India? Ultimately वो पैसा कहाँ पे आएगा? वापस आएगा ही आएगा. It's a very unique argument put forward by RBI. So obviously 1 or 2 points I may agree, but not all. But this is how you have to write an answer in the UPSC mains also. Getting it? I hope everyone is clear with this logic. So read the first one, increase in the gross FDI. I think it is sorted. Second point, outcome of strong economic growth. Signs of maturing investment ecosystem. And fourth one is sign of free market. You can just see why is it a matter of concern. I think it's quite easy. And what steps we have to take. वहाँ पे एक term है BIT, Bilateral Investment Treaty. We'll cover what is Bilateral Investment Treaty in the next topic. We discussed systematic deregulation. It's a more sophisticated word for improving ease of doing business. Third one, can anyone tell me what is this plug and play model? Plug and play model क्या होता है? Okay, good. So basically why the manufacturing sector has failed to take off is, as you know, the land acquisition is considered to be very time consuming and cumbersome. Private sector, if it wants to acquire land, it is hugely time consuming. What happens in plug and play is the government itself will acquire the land. After acquiring the land, the government itself will build the basic infrastructure like road, electricity, water connection, buildings, everything is built by the government. The only role of the private sector is come in, plug in the machines and start to manufacture. That is why we use the word plug and play, where the role of private sector is simply to install machineries and then start to manufacture. Okay. So we have already built that kind of plug and play industrial centers across India. Like there's one in Chennai and the one in Jaipur. It's called as Mahindra World City. You can write example Mahindra World City in Chennai. Mahindra World City in Chennai. ठीक है. हाँ, PM Mitra Parks are also same concept. Even SEZs are also same concept, special economic zones. Okay. Let's move to the next topic. Okay. The next topic here is about BIT, Bilateral Investment Treaty. At most, I do not expect UPSC to ask this as a 15-marker question. It may be asked as a 10-marker question. So let's understand what is this Bilateral Investment Treaty. Okay. You may pay attention. Let's say this is India, and within India, we want to attract foreign investment. Now, foreign investment, if it has come to India, these foreign investors, they may pose multiple risks before investing or after investing. What kind of risk they may face is, for example, one risk which they may face is there may be legal uncertainty, sudden changes in laws. Suddenly, if you change the laws, it may go against their profit motive. Like, for example, we have initially said that certain rules and regulations will be applicable to foreign companies, and after they make investment, we make those rules and regulations more stringent, which might affect their profit margin. This is one thing. The second risk which they might face is, in some companies, in some countries, government may go for nationalization, where the government might take over the assets of the foreign companies. Similarly, there might be some problems related to tax. Do you think any problem was related to tax with respect to foreign companies in India in the recent past? You must have heard about Vodafone ka tax controversy hua tha. There was something called as retrospective taxation. Government may suddenly change certain aspects of tax, and if the government changes those aspects of tax, the foreign investor may get affected. So if I am a foreign investor, if I want to invest money, I will be really worried before investing money because of these things. So India as a country has to give them certain clarity, has to give them certain assurance. You invest your money in India, we will ensure that your investment is safe. For example, we will say, we will not unnecessarily change rules and regulations which may go against you. We might say, we will not take over your assets. We might say, we will not unnecessarily change the tax policies. We might also say, if you are not happy or if you have certain grievances against the government, in that particular case, we will provide you with an effective dispute redressal mechanism. So when a foreign investor is assured of these things, a legal clarity, tax clarity, a clarity in terms of ease of doing business, and the assurance that if something goes wrong, they can approach the courts. That kind of clarity will help us to get more of foreign investment. I hope you understood this. So, what we generally do to give this kind of clarity, we sign an agreement called as bilateral investment treaty. This bilateral investment treaty is always signed between two countries. That is why we say it is bilateral. It is always bilateral. Fine. What used to happen prior to 2016, whatever BITs that we have signed with countries across the world, they gave certain protection to investors vis-a-vis the government. But the problem was, there has to be a fine balance in terms of how much rights we give to investors. अगर हमने investors को बहुत ज़्यादा rights दे दिए, what will happen is that will go against the interest of our own government. For example, if we give investors the right to sue our Indian government, वो क्या करेंगे? They'll drag Indian government before a international tribunal. Something which has happened in the case of Vodafone. So repeatedly a number of cases emerged where the foreign investors started suing the Indian government. That is when we realized that the bilateral investment treaties are loaded in the favor of foreign investors. तो हमने क्या किया? All the bilateral investment treaties that we have signed, we decided to scrap them. And in place of BIT, now we have come up with, look at the word, model. And we have said, henceforth, whenever we sign a bilateral investment treaty, it will be based upon the model BIT. Model BIT will also provide for certain rights to investors vis-a-vis the government. But it is being said, if you look at a seesaw, right? Seesaw. एक तरफ से नीचे जाता है, दूसरी तरफ से ऊपर जाता है, right? But either side is always, one side is down, other side is up. The same thing has happened here as well. If you look at the earlier BITs were loaded in whose favor? Investors' favor. But the model BIT is loaded in whose favor? Government's favor. And if foreign investors believe that if the treaty is loaded in the favor of government, the foreign investors will be jittery before they make investment. I hope it's clear. That is why government has recently said that it is going to rework on this model BIT. That is what we are going to cover. Did you understand the background to this entire story? Okay. Just pay attention. Everything is there in the notes. एक बार देख लेना यहाँ पे. Look at the question. What kind of question you can get? Compare the features of earlier BITs with the model BIT. Do you think model BIT has been able to promote foreign investment while safeguarding India's sovereign interest? It's a debate, right? Let's see here. Wherever validation has to be done, I'll tell you to write it down. Okay, think here. Under bilateral investment treaty, government is giving an assurance to the foreign company that we will protect your assets. That is what the BIT does. So under the earlier BITs, government used to say to the foreign company that we will protect your tangible assets also, as well as intangible assets also. What are tangible assets? Something like buildings, which are any factories, those assets will be protected. But not just tangible assets, will also protect your shares, bonds, and contract. What does it mean? Is if government and a foreign company if they enter into a contract, for example, this foreign company might not be investing in India. This foreign company might be based outside India, and if Indian government has entered into contract with this foreign company, and let's say some disputes arise in this foreign contract, this foreign company can actually sue the Indian government. What is the main idea of BIT? To attract foreign investment into what? India. But यहाँ पे we are offering protection to a foreign company which is not essentially based in India. This foreign company is based outside India. Because जो definition था, वो क्या definition था? Asset based definition which will cover both tangible and intangible. I'll give you one specific examples. There was an agreement between Coal India Limited, which is a government owned agency, and there's another company from Australia called as the White Industries. This company is based in Australia. This company, White Industries, was supposed to supply some equipment to Coal India Limited. But when Coal India Limited imported this equipment, right, the quality of equipment was not as per the standards which Coal India had expected. So there was a kind of delay in making payment to White Industries. But problem कहाँ पे था? Coal India के पास problem नहीं था. Problem कहाँ पे था? White Industries, because it supplied a faulty equipment. But you know what White Industries did? It dragged Coal India Limited before the international tribunal, and it said, I have supplied equipment to Coal India, but Coal India has not paid me money on time. The international tribunal directed Coal India that because you have purchased this equipment, you have to make the payment immediately, plus it imposed penalty on Coal India. Now all of this is a problem, because ultimately White Industries has never invested in India. Na? White Industries has simply entered into what? Contract. Did you get the point? तो क्या करना चाहिए अभी मॉडल बीआईटी में? What kind of for protection we should give to foreign investors? Something which is tangible. We should never give protection for something which is intangible. So what we have said, now the definition in model BITs, it is enterprise based definition. Enterprise definition means we will offer protection to only those enterprises which have physically established operations in India. Earlier definition kya tha? Asset based. Now it is enterprise based. Can you simply write about this case, White Industries case ka? Just make a diagram. This particular diagram, you should be able to relate to it. Coal India Limited supplying equipment to White Industries. White Industries supplying equipment to Coal India Limited. And anyone knows what was this Devas multimedia case? किसको पता है? Okay. This is also a very interesting case. I'll tell you what has happened in this Devas multimedia case. There's a commercial arm of ISRO. ISRO has a commercial arm. It is called as, it is Anthrax Corporation. Anthrax Corporation had decided to lease a spectrum called as S-band spectrum. It had leased out this S-band spectrum to a company called as Devas Multimedia. Now, this Devas Multimedia was actually a company which was based in Mauritius. And this company was essentially owned by Indian residents. ऐसे companies को क्या बोलते हैं? It was nothing but a shell company. Problem number one, we have leased spectrum to a shell company based in Mauritius. Problem number two, if you look at S-band, the significance of S-band is it is a very significant spectrum which can be used for military and strategic reasons. And we ended up leasing out this spectrum to a private company, not just any random private company, it was a shell company whose original owners we did not know. It was a big scam actually. The case went to before the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said that there was a corruption involved in this entire case, and Supreme Court cancelled this entire allocation. You know what happened then? Devas Multimedia, it filed a case against the Indian government saying that Indian government allocated me S-band spectrum before, I have already invested so much money now, and now Indian government is taking away my S-band spectrum, which ultimately shows that we ended up giving too much protection to any foreign investor in spite of them not having any physical operations in India. Did you get the point? Okay. Second, IPRs, intellectual property rights. Intellectual property rights were covered under BITs. We said if the foreign companies have patents, copyrights, trademarks, we will give them protection. We will not take away your IPRs. इससे problem क्या हुआ? It prevented Indian government from issuing compulsory licensing. Do you know what is compulsory licensing? If there is a particular drug, if that particular drug is very, very costly, what we can do, we can ask a Indian company to manufacture the same drug and sell that particular drug in a market at a very less price. Has it happened in the past? If you know, there was a drug, the name of the drug was called as Nexavar. This drug was used to treat kidney cancer, and we issued compulsory licensing to manufacture Nexavar. So when under BIT we said that we'll give protection to your patents also, this essentially meant that we cannot issue compulsory licensing to the drugs. अभी हमने क्या बोला है? Will not cover your patents now, which means we have complete flexibility to issue compulsory licensing. Can I say it's a good thing for the government? It's a good thing for the government because we can reduce the prices of the costly patented drugs. But bad for whom? Bad for the pharmaceutical company who would probably want to manufacture a patented drug in India. So now a pharmaceutical company will probably think twice before manufacturing a patented drug in India, because it might be a belief that government will issue a compulsory licensing and it might lose out on the profit margin. Then you can see dispute resolution. This is very interesting. Earlier we said if there is any dispute between the government and the foreign investor, any kind of dispute, we said foreign investors can sue Indian government directly at various international forums without approaching our own courts. Directly they can go there. जिसी के चलते, companies like Vodafone, or for that matter, Devas Multimedia, or for that matter, White Industries, they sued Indian government before the tribunals. I hope you must be knowing about ICC, International Criminal Court, and ICJ, International Court of Justice. India is a member of which one? India is not a member of ICC. Any specific reason? Any specific reason? The main reason is Indian government is of a very firm belief that if at all there are any disputes in India, these disputes are best handled before our own courts, because our own courts are impartial and unbiased. Indian government believes that we will not appear before the foreign courts. We are always very particular about it. Same way, under this BIT, the Indian government was repeatedly appearing before the international tribunals. It is a huge embarrassment for Indian government to what we have said now. We have said foreign investors must first approach whom? Indian courts before approaching international tribunals. You first approach our High Court, you first approach our Supreme Court, and you have to approach international tribunal only after how many years? 5 years. First, ensure that you follow the due process of law within India. If you're not happy with the ruling given by High Court or Supreme Court, then you can go before the international tribunal. I hope this part is clear. Look at this. Earlier, if there are any tax disputes, the foreign investors could raise that issue under the BIT, tax-related cases. That is why you had this Vodafone company raising this dispute before the government. अभी हमने क्या किया है? If you have any dispute related to tax, you cannot raise that issue now, because now we say whether we increase tax, whether we reduce tax, or whatever we do to a tax policy, ये हमारा sovereign right है. And because it's a sovereign right, you guys cannot question us now. So this is a new thing which has happened in BIT. 1, 2, 3, 4. क्या लगता है आपको as a foreign investor? Government बोल रहा है you cannot raise anything with respect to tax policies. अगर आपके पास पेटेंट है, हम कभी भी ले सकते हैं आपका पेटेंट. You will get protection only when you make physical investment. Then the thing is you cannot approach international courts at least for 5 years. पहला वाला जो था वो किसके बेस में था? Investor. Now it is moving towards government. CSR obligation. Now पहले तो right तो हम लेके चले गए. Now what we are doing? Now we are putting more obligations also on them. Earlier they were not required to have any CSR obligation. Now we are saying you need to have a CSR obligation. On one hand, your rights are taken away, while on the other hand, you are put more responsibilities. Fine? And you can read the last line in your handout. MFN. Earlier, MFN was by default included in all the BITs. I hope you know what is MFN. You offer a concession to one country, automatically the concession will be applicable to all others. It's like if I have a BIT, for example, with Australia and another BIT with Kuwait. It's just an example. In the BIT with Australia, for example, I have not provided for any dispute resolution mechanism. Like I have not given right to an Australian company to approach a arbitration tribunal, international tribunal. But in the BIT with Kuwait, Indian government has provided for a dispute resolution, where we have said that if a Kuwaiti company has any dispute with the Indian government, then they can approach a international tribunal. Can I say it's an unfair treatment for whom? Australia. It's a violation of which principle? MFN. Because of that, Australia automatically, by default, by invoking MFN, they can approach a dispute resolution mechanism. And that is what precisely this Australian company has done. कौन सा company है? White Industries. You can see here, prevented Indian government from having BITs with different countries according to its requirement. Example, White Industries Australia. ये जो है, ये रियल में हुआ है. This is a real thing which has happened. With Kuwait, we provided for dispute resolution. With Australia, we did not provide for dispute resolution, yet Australian company invoked this thing. How was it able to do so? MFN. तो अभी हमने क्या बोला? No MFN. We'll have agreement with every country as per our own requirement. There will be no concept of MFN in the bilateral investment treaties. Take your time, just go through all these points. Is there any specific point which you want me to explain again? Asset based and enterprise based. See, earlier under BITs we are offering protection to foreign companies. Question is, which foreign companies are we offering protection? Earlier we offered protection to foreign companies which either had assets in India, and what kind of assets? Either tangible or intangible. Like a foreign company like Foxconn has tangible assets, it was offered protection. There's a company in Australia which has not invested in India, but this company in Australia has entered into contract with an Indian company. Under that contract, it has supplied some equipment to Indian company. It means the company has asset, na? Which asset? The equipment which it has sold. So even for that also it has given protection, which is wrong, na? Why should we offer protection to a foreign company which does not has physical presence? So that's what we said. We will give protection to only those companies which have physical operations. Kind of protection has remained same, but what are we protecting has got changed. So what will write here? What do you think will be writing the second part? Do you think model BIT has been able to promote foreign investment while safeguarding India's sovereign interest? Has it been able to safeguard India's sovereign interest? Yes. But has it been able to promote foreign investment? No. And why you should say no is because there are certain features which are going against the foreign investment. Those features you know. 1, 2, 3, 4. आपका conclusion क्या होना चाहिए? Because the government itself has given a guarantee. Even the finance minister in her budget speech herself has said that we will rework on BIT. How it will be reworked? It is still a work in progress. So your conclusion should be something like the model BIT has to be reworked so as to find a right balance between the interest of the investors and the Indian government. Because we don't know how it is going to be reworked, just right, it has to be reworked. Okay? Is everyone clear? Okay. The next topic is entrepreneurship. You have the next handout? Okay. Entrepreneurship. आज का hand. Okay, without looking at the handout, can anyone tell me what's the definition of a startup? Startup का क्या definition होता है? Less than 10 years, then? Do you know that there has been a recent change in the definition of startup in Feb 2026, just before your prelims? So you can see the handout. In the handout, you have a latest definition of a startup. As per that, you know, startup has to be registered as a company. It can be registered as a LLP, that is limited liability partnership, or it can be a partnership firm. And look at the fourth one. It's the latest entry to that. What is that fourth one? cooperative society. Please mark that as important, because for the first time ever, government has said even the cooperative societies, be it multi-state cooperatives or single-state cooperatives, they will also be recognized as startups. Second, what should be the age of startup? 10 years. But there's an exception. This is a new exception. That exception is there for deep tech startups. How much is that? 20 years. What is a deep tech startup? A startup which is involved in cutting edge technologies, advanced technologies. That is a deep tech. Second is the third one is the turnover. How much should be the turnover in the normal startups? 200 crores. For deep tech, how much it should be? 300 crores. But कितने साल तक? What is that? I think I mentioned the timeline also. For the next 10 years. For the next 10 years. Okay. Okay, just add. Annual turnover in the next 10 years. इसका मतलब ये है, two criteria should be simultaneously fulfilled, which means the company should be less than 10 years, and in those 10 years, its turnover should be less than 200 crores. Let's say there's a startup company. In the second year itself, its turnover increases to 250 crores. That company will no longer be recognized as a startup. Originality. A company should not be formed by splitting or restructuring already existing business. So these are the 4 criteria for a startup. It's a new criteria which we have adopted. And I hope you know the meaning of unicorn. किसको बोलते हैं unicorn? जिनका valuation is more than how much? How much? Yeah, whose valuation is more than 1 billion, we call them as unicorns. Okay. Now, just pay attention. Why are we even discussing this topic of startups? ये तो basic है. The Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, last year, he made a very interesting statement. He said that startups in China are essentially focusing on deep tech. Like they are focusing on AI, artificial intelligence. They are focusing on electric mobility. They are also focusing on manufacturing of semiconductors. So what China is doing, China is using technology to solve modern day problems. This is what China is doing. But let's see, according to him, what are startups in India doing? He says that startups in India are more focused on what? Customer. They are more focused on customer. Like if I could tell you about the startups in India, what are the startups? You have startups like Uber, Ola, right? Then Flipkart was also an Indian startup only. Or you have startups in fantasy games like Dream 11. So what most of the startups are doing, either they are into e-commerce delivery or into fantasy sports. Our startups are more focused on consumer. They're not focused on solving the modern day problems. In fact, he used a word. He said that our startups are more focused on ensuring that the burger gets delivered in 5 minutes. Whereas Chinese-based startups are more focused on how to best use advanced technology like AI. That's what we are doing, na? इतने सारे startups आ रहे हैं हमारे, Swiggy, Zepto, ये सब क्या है? E-commerce delivery. He goes on to say that Indian startups are following. What is this approach? Dukandari. What do you mean by Dukandari? number one is basically you purchase something and you sell it. That is one way of looking at it. But other ways, अगर आप कोई बिजनेस स्टार्ट करना चाहते हो जो फेल प्रूफ है, बेस्ट बिजनेस है दुकान चलाना. Do you get the what I'm trying to say? It is the least risky business. लोग तो आके खरीदेंगे सामान तो. So what is trying to say? Our entrepreneurs are less risk taking as compared to entrepreneurs in China. We are more focused on customer rather than on deep tech. Did you get the point? It is in this case itself, there has been recent change in the definition of startups. ये जो change हुआ है, change in terms of turnover, change in terms of age, it was done keeping in mind the special needs of deep tech startups. Did you get the point? So, a question which can be asked is this question. You can see. Compare the startup ecosystem of India and China. Discuss the challenges before deep tech innovation in India. Why are Indian startups not focusing on deep tech innovation? If you look at a handout, I've highlighted the meaning of startups. I've not highlighted the present status. You can add the present status there. You can add one line, present status. In the same handout, at the top you can write present status. India has more than 2 lakh registered startups. India has more than 2 lakh registered startups. Full stop. Around 50% of the startups, are based in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Okay, so in your handout, you can see what is the startup ecosystem of China and India. That's what we're going to see here. If you see the startup ecosystem of India and China, in terms of approach, what is the difference? In China, the startup ecosystem is considered to be top-down approach. Whereas in case of India, our approach is mostly bottom-up. Let's try to identify what is the difference here. See what China does. China is giving incentive to its startups, similar to how we are giving incentive to our startups. There is a scheme of the government called as Startup India scheme. In China also, they have a similar scheme to give incentive to startups. But what China does is, the Chinese government at the top itself will pinpoint certain sunrise sectors in which it wants the startups to grow. Probably the Chinese government will pick up the sunrise sectors like electric mobility, or let's say AI, artificial intelligence, or for that matter, semiconductor manufacturing. Chinese government at the top level will say, these are the sunrise sectors, and in these sunrise sectors, we would want more startups to grow, and in these sectors, we will give more incentives. तो ये डायरेक्शन की कौन सा कंपनी स्टार्ट करना है या किस सेक्टर में स्टार्ट करना है, ये कहां से आ रहा है? टॉप से आ रहा है. इंडियन गवर्नमेंट सिंपली सेज, आप स्टार्टअप बनाओ, वी आर देयर टू प्रोवाइड यू मनी. What kind of model it is? It is more of bottom up. And here, when government is saying you start your business, will provide you initial capital, who is deciding what has to be started? The people themselves are starting. So obviously people by default will choose something which is least risky. Did you get what I'm trying to say here? So that is a fundamental problem. It is mostly top down there, and here it is bottom up. Okay, so there in the model you can write for China top down, for India it is bottom up. Second, ecosystem. Ecosystem को compare करेंगे. If you go back to China, right? China somewhere in 1980s. Chinese economy and Indian economy in somewhere in 1917, 80s were at the same level. But suddenly Chinese economy took off, whereas Indian economy continued to remain at the same pace. One of the reasons for takeoff of the Chinese economy was state-led industrialization. The government itself started focusing a lot on manufacturing, state-led industrialization. Same way, if you look at the startup ecosystem in India, it is once again led by who? State. State-led ecosystem, where the Chinese government is determining which sector the startup should grow, how much money we should give to the startups. Everything is decided by the Chinese government. So what China is doing, whatever success it has replicated in manufacturing sector, the same success it is trying to replicate in the startup ecosystem as well. So right, ecosystem, state-led ecosystem, state-led ecosystem, state-led ecosystem. India mein who is leading the startup ecosystem? The founders, founder-led ecosystem, founder, startup founders, founder-led ecosystem. Funding from China, where do you think majority of funding comes in China? State, government funding. It can write higher government funding. Higher government funding. In India, ज़्यादातर funding कहाँ से आता है? Venture capital. Venture capital. Nature of funding in China. Basically, there is something called as look at this word. We call this as patient capital. What do you mean by patient capital? Is a capital which is willing to wait for long before earning profit. Now, generally, if you are investing in something like deep tech, AI, number one, it is risky. Second, it will take more time to generate profit. If you want to start something like Zepto, right from day one itself, we can start making profit. So if you look at the funding in China is more of what capital? Patient capital. It is willing to wait for long time to earn profit. And that is quite natural also, because पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है वहाँ पे? पैसा government से आ रहा है. And government itself is willing to wait for long. If the money is coming more from venture capital, they'll not wait for long. They'll probably wait for short span of time. So you can write nature of funding, patient capital. For India, capital which looks for quick returns. For India, capital which looks for quick returns. China is focusing on its strength. What is China's strength, by the way? Manufacturing. So manufacturing is what? Hardware. So focus of China is on hardware. Focus of China is on hardware. India का strength क्या है? IT sector. So India is focusing on what? Software. You can see whatever advances we have made, like we have come up with PhonePe, GPay, or for that matter, things like Zerodha. All these are what? Are mostly related to software only. No? Role of technology in China to solve modern day problems. To solve modern day problems. Role of technology in India, customer orientation. Okay, examples of deep tech startups in China. Yes, anyone knows? Yes, best example, DeepSeek. Which one? Yeah. So from China, you can write example. All of you must have heard about this company, BYD, Electric Mobility. So there is one company, BYD and NIO. Both these companies have made very big names in terms of electric mobility. BYD and NIO. Okay. Apart from BYD and NIO, DeepSeek, and there's another company called as SenseTime. They have made big name in the field of AI, artificial intelligence. And there is another company in China called as Horizon Robotics. This company is making big name in the field of semiconductor manufacturing. And if you look at India, India के तो बहुत सारे startups हैं, आप लिख सकते हो as per your knowledge. Ola, Uber, Zepto, right? Urban Clap, yeah, Blinkit, those are the examples. So which is mostly oriented more towards the customer. I hope this part is clear, everyone. Okay. Now the question is, why do you think Indian startups are not focusing on deep tech? Why are we not focusing on deep tech? The answer for you is this comparison between China versus India. उसी में answers है आपके. Because what model are we following? No, ये वाला कौन सा? Top down or bottom up? Bottom up. Ecosystem is led by whom? Founder. In China, it is mainly state-led. Funding, what kind of funding we are getting? It is a capital which is looking for quick returns. We are not getting more of patient capital, right? Whatever points that you have write here, the same thing can be write as a challenges, but only thing is you need to add some data here. On the right-hand side, there are certain challenges with deep tech startups. Please write. Nature of government support, bottom up. Nature of government support, bottom up. Limited government support, in the bracket, write $150 billion. $150 billion as compared to 1.5 trillion in China. Can you see the difference? 150 कहाँ पे? 1.5. 1.5 trillion. It's a huge difference. Lower share in global venture capital funding. Put a hyphen and write India 5%, China 40%. India's share in the global venture capital funding is just 5%, China's is 40%. What do you mean by bootstrapped startups? Self-funded startups. The startups who are not getting enough money, they are providing the capital by the founders themselves. ऐसे startups को बोलते हैं bootstrapped. One such very big bootstrapped startup in India is Zerodha. Zerodha is a bootstrapped startup. It was actually funded by the founder himself. Lower expenditure on research and development. How much are you spending on R&D? 0.6% of GDP. Just add 0.6% of GDP. As compared to, any idea how much it is in China? 5% is too high. As compared to 2.1%. As compared to 2.1% in China. Weakness in IPR regime. You know software, right? Software, is it patented or copyrighted in India? When you develop a software, can you patent a software or does it get copyrighted? Please understand, for software there is no concept of patent. For software there is only a copyright. In India, if you compare patents and copyrights, which are much better protected, patents are much better protected, right? So Indian startup companies are not getting into deep tech because, you know, if you have to develop something like AI is essentially based upon what? Software. And software को किस type of protection हमें देना चाहिए if we have to develop AI? Patents. So when I say weakness in intellectual property regime means that the software is not patented in India, it is protected under a weaker copyright regime. So put a hyphen and write, software is protected under weaker copyright regime. Weaker copyright regime instead of patent regime. Absence of skilled personnel. Any idea what percentage of India's workforce is formally skilled? Formally. Only 4% of India's workforce is formally skilled as compared to 96% in South Korea. Can you see the vast difference? As compared to 96% in South Korea. Policy framework. Do you have any problems with respect to startups in India? Policy में flip-flop होता आ रहा है? Any specific policy which has got changed? Government imposed some tax for 1 or 2 years, फिर बाद में उसको scrap कर दिया. ये कौन सा tax था recently? Angel tax. Remember, government imposed angel tax for 1 or 2 years, then decided to scrap it, right? So when you do a constant flip-flop in the policies, this will create uncertainty in the minds of investors. So policy framework, right? Frequent changes in tax such as angel tax. Frequent changes in tax such as the angel tax. Now, despite all these challenges, not everything is bad for India. There are certain startups which are doing extremely good even in the field of deep tech. Look at the case studies. Can you see the case studies of deep tech startups in India? In case of space launch vehicles, we have a startup called as Skyroot. Then for satellites, we have Pixel and Dhruva. Has anyone heard Dhruva? It has been a very big name in terms of satellite. Huh? Which one? Cryogenic engine was, yeah. Then you can see for defense, you must have heard about IdeaForge. IdeaForge came out with an IPO last year and it broke record. Then EVs, Ola and Ather. Chara Technologies. Can you see what is very specific about this Chara Technologies in the bracket? When China decided to ban the export of permanent magnets to India, in response, this company decided to develop electric motors without using rare earth minerals. You must appreciate the fact that Indians are by default jugadus. But the only thing is we have to be put under pressure. We work when we are put under pressure. यहाँ से आसानी से rare earth mineral मिल रहा था चाइना से, तो Indians thought कि why take pain? But when China stopped, that is when they realized कि कुछ ना कुछ कर सकते हैं, right? So this company started manufacturing electric vehicle motors without using rare earth minerals. And this is a very small company based in Bangalore, small startup company. Clear? Okay. I think other things are self-explanatory. Okay? So we'll stop here. In tomorrow's class, we will be completing growth and development as well as employment. That will be covering in tomorrow's class. So entire employment will be covered in tomorrow's class. Okay? Thank you so much. And please write answers and show it to me. Okay? We do have class tomorrow.
Forum is starting a residential program and specifically designed for those students who didn't clear prelims earlier. At that moment, I felt that this program is tailor-made for you because what you described in that email, it felt like somebody was describing me.
Fortunately, sir, I cleared prelims, and then, sir, the same schedule for mains FRC 4 started at the same place, and again I made the same promise. चाहे वो AWFG का टेस्ट हो या SFG का हो या करंट अफेयर्स की क्लास हो, I'll do it. सब कुछ करूँगा जैसा जैसा मुझे बताया जा रहा है, and fortunately it worked again. Then I stayed there for interview also, and fortunately I got the rank.
तो फोरम तो एट लेटर स्टेज आया, बट आई बिलीव अगर मेरे पास फोरम की गाइडेंस अगर पहले होती और FRC की गाइडेंस पहले होती तो शायद इतना लंबा टाइम मुझे वेट नहीं करना पड़ता.
मेल आया था FRC का, तो मेरे को अच्छा लगा कि जो सेटअप था वो अच्छा था कि जिससे 11th 12th में पढ़ते थे ना कि जबरदस्ती पढ़ाया जाएगा, वो था. तो मैंने कहा ये तो बेस्ट है. अगर ये पहले होता तो काफी अच्छा हो जाता, तो मतलब इतना टाइम नहीं लगता.
And before coming to FRC, literally there was a lot of broken confidence, and I thought I would never be able to clear pre. This is the biggest hurdle of my life. But then, ever since December, things changed, and I just followed the plan to the hilt. Gave every test, even the open test, all the simulators, the CSAT simulators also. It was for the first time that I cleared the prelims, I cleared the mains, and then I cleared the interview and finally got a job under Government of India. I was a part of FRC 1 and FRC 4. So I think FRC played an instrumental role in making me what I am today.
So first, many congratulations to all of you who have cleared the prelims. Let us give them a big hand.
I subscribed to the second level of SFG. I think I told you, sir. I had gotten to know about sir from a very close friend, which was honestly like my paradigmatic change, if you will call it, towards prelims preparation came when I heard sir speak on prelims.
मेरा नाम डॉक्टर आकांक्षा सिंह है. मैं गाज़ीपुर ज़िले से रहने वाली हूँ. मैं ऐसे पेशे से डॉक्टर हूँ. मैंने MBBS और मास्टर्स कर रखी है. मैं गायनाकोलॉजिस्ट हूँ. ये मेरा सेकंड अटैम्प्ट था जिसमें मेरी 301 रैंक आई है UPSC CSE 2025 में.
%65% of IS toppers under rank 10 and 20 in CSE 2025 final list have been students of Mains Guidance Program MGP by ForumIAS Academy, including rank 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19. Mains Guidance Program MGP 2026 to 27. Join Mains Guidance Program, India's most trusted program for mains preparation. To know more about MGP, speak to an IS topper near you or email us at contact@